Part 1. You wake up shivering. Not the cute, oh, it's chilly kind of shiver, but the full body, your nose hurts, frostbitten soul kind of tremble. Your first thought isn't even where am I? It's more like why are my toes missing? Which for the record they aren't yet. They're just numb. You're lying on something that could generously be called a bed, though it's really more like a wooden bench with a bit of straw and a lot of regret on top. The inside of the Viking hut is dark. Not midnight dark, more like you've been stuffed inside a wool sock and someone forgot to poke eye holes. A faint glow seeps through a hole in the thatched roof, letting in just enough light to confirm that yes, that smell is real. It's you. And maybe the person snoring next to you. Or the dog. Or the goat. It's hard to say who lives here and who's just crashing for the night. Your blanket is a coarse, itchy wool sheet that might have once been a sheep. Now it's a burrito of cold disappointment. The air smells like wet dirt, old fish, and wood smoke. You try to roll over, but the low ceiling means your head connects with a beam so solid it feels like Odin himself just smacked you with his hammer. Welcome to the Viking village. Someone stirs nearby. You catch the glint of eyes in the dark human eyes, thankfully, and hear the shuffle of feet on packed dirt. A voice mutters something that sounds like a curse, or maybe just a normal greeting. In Viking culture, the line between the two is thin. You decide to get up. Bad idea. The moment your feet hit the ground, you realize that the floor is colder than a tax collector's heart. You gasp, which earns a grunt of laughter from an elderly woman squatting near the hearth, casually tossing what looks like dried moss into the fire. First winter, she says, not unkindly. You nod, teeth chattering. She gestures to a wooden pail near the wall. You crawl over like a frozen turtle and peer in. Water. Solid ice. You're supposed to wash your face with this. No, actually. You're supposed to break the ice, then wash. And then for extra fun, you dry off with a rag that smells like old salmon. You don't ask questions, you're too cold to form them. Let's take stock. You slept in a one-room hut with 6 people, 3 animals, a fire that went out hours ago, and 1 communal blanket. Privacy doesn't exist. Personal space is a myth, and the smell. The smell is the price of admission. You finally stand trembling, wrapping your wool tunic tighter. It's like a medieval snuggie with fleas. You shuffle to the door, which is really just a heavy piece of wood shoved into a hole in the wall, and push it open. And then immediately regret every life decision that brought you here. Outside, the world is white. Snow stretches to the edge of the fjord. The sky is a shade of gray that could only be described as emotional damage. The wind hits you like a slap, then lingers to insult your ancestors. You blink back tears, or maybe they're ice crystals. The air is so dry it feels like it's stealing moisture straight from your soul. Then comes your first challenge of the day, nature's call. You glance around, no outhouse, no latrine, just snow, a shovel, and an awkward patch behind the woodpile. The old woman sees your hesitation and hands you the shovel with a smirk. Dig fast, she says, or your bits will freeze off. Good morning indeed. Now crouched behind the pile of firewood, you wonder how civilization survived this. How anyone did their business outside in sub-zero temperatures without questioning all of their gods. Your fingers barely function. You drop the shovel. You step in something unholy. You slip. You curse. The goat watches judgmentally. Historians still debate whether Viking sanitation practices helped build immunity or simply culled the weak. You're starting to believe the latter. Back inside, someone shoves a bowl into your hands. It's warm. That's the good news. The bad news, it's full of lumpy gray broth with floating chunks of something vaguely fishy. You take a sip. It's salty. Too salty. Then weirdly sour. Is that butter? You're not sure. But it's not your place to judge because you're hungry enough to finish it. Almost. There's a hunk of bread too, but it's dense enough to be a building material. You try to bite into it. It bites back. Suddenly, a toddler runs past with a dead rat on a string. You think it's a toy. You really, really hope it's a toy. The hut fills with the sounds of the day beginning. Someone sharpens a knife. Someone else sharpens a different knife. There's a brief argument over who owns a particular antler spoon. Someone shouts, "Where's the goat?" And the goat bolts outside with something in its mouth. Probably your sock. You sit by the fire, clutching your bowl like it's a lifeline. Across the room, two warriors argue about whether Thor would beat a bear in single combat. One claims he saw it happen last winter. There's a bang on the door. A neighbor enters, shaking off snow, and shouts something about wolves near the sheep. Everyone groans. You prepare to face whatever comes next, but not before someone hands you a spear and says, "Don't stab yourself this time. You don't remember the first time. That's not comforting." Part 2. You're outside again, not by choice. You've been drafted into early morning animal duty, which sounds innocent enough until you realize it means trudging through knee-deep snow to search for missing livestock. Someone said wolves. Someone else said they heard hoofbeats near the edge of the fjord. You're not entirely sure what you're listening for, but the wind is howling loud enough to drown out your own thoughts. The path out of the village is marked by a series of muddy footprints and something that might be blood, or maybe just beet juice. Hard to say with Vikings. The air slices your cheeks like tiny knives. You cover your mouth with your sleeve, but the wool smells like fish oil and smoke. It's less helpful than advertised. You stomp through drifts of snow, squinting for signs of movement. Your fingers are stiff around the wooden shaft of the spear, which is already half cracked from someone's training session the night before. You pass a hut where two men are arguing in harsh whispers. One of them holds a chicken upside down, the other holds a drinking horn. It's not clear if the chicken is part of the argument or the solution. Your guide for this livestock rescue mission is a boy named Eric. He's about 10, but his face is already carved with the beginnings of a warrior's scowl, and he walks like he owns every inch of this frozen land. He doesn't say much, but every few steps he stops, sniffs the air, and mutters, "Goat." You want to ask how he knows, but honestly, you're afraid of the answer. Eventually, you reach the woodline. The trees are tall, silent, dusted with snow like they've seen things and have no intention of telling. The light is dim and blue, like the world forgot how to warm up. Eric points at a patch of broken twigs. "Wolf," he says. "Big one." Your stomach drops. You grip your spear tighter, which mostly just causes splinters. You scan the trees but see nothing until you do. A flash of fur, low to the ground, then gone. You start to back away, but Eric moves forward. He whistles, loud, sharp, and somehow, the goat comes trotting out from behind a bush, looking incredibly pleased with itself, and carrying a piece of someone's tunic in its mouth. You have never been so relieved to see such a smug animal in your life. But the wolf is still out there, probably watching, maybe disappointed. Back to the village, Eric says, like he's just done his taxes, not stared down a predator with nothing but goat-based confidence. The walk back is somehow worse than the trip out. Now you're wet, your boots are leaking, and your reward, a splintered spear, a muddy cloak, and goat hair in your mouth. Back at the village, you're told it's time for cleanup. That sounds promising until you realize it's not your personal hygiene that needs attention. It's the village's. You're handed a wooden rake, a leather bucket, and a suspiciously heavy ladle. Someone points to a pile near the edge of the pen and says, "Start there." You've never seen so much dung in one place. Cow dung, horse dung, sheep dung, maybe human. It's a democratic pile. The smell alone could end diplomatic relations. You rake, you scoop, you try not to cry. A woman walks past balancing a child on one hip and a deer haunch on the other. She doesn't even glance at the muck. For her, it's just background noise. Historians still debate whether Viking hygiene was ahead of its time or simply more tolerable when everyone smelled equally awful. You begin to understand why sauna rituals were considered sacred, not just for cleanliness, but for survival of the nostrils. Halfway through shoveling what might be pig droppings into a wooden trough, A man named Ulf wanders over and offers you a lump of something that looks like cheese but smells like feet. You hesitate. He nods solemnly. Good for strength. You eat it. It is not good for anything. After the communal cleaning comes the bathing ritual, and you're honestly excited until you realize that ritual just means go wash in the stream and try not to die. You strip to your undergarments, basically a loose linen sack that flaps in the wind like a flag of surrender, and tiptoe to the icy water. The stream is partially frozen. The edge crackles under your feet. You kneel, splash your face, and immediately regret every decision that led to this point. It feels like your skull is trying to implode. You dunk a rag into the water, scrub your arms, and try not to scream. A local woman scrubs her armpits nearby, humming an old saga. She seems unfazed. You feel like your heart is slowing down from hypothermia. Just when you think it can't get worse, someone yells, "Don't forget the teeth." You're handed a stick. A frayed stick. It's wet. It's slightly green. It's your toothbrush. You stick it in your mouth. It tastes like mold and birch bark. You smile. It does not help. By the time you return to the hut, your hands are raw, your face is purple, and your self-respect is somewhere in that stream, frozen solid. You collapse near the fire pit, hoping for warmth. A little boy pokes you in the leg and offers you a slug from his wooden cup. It smells like honey and mold. You accept. You drink. It's better than expected. For now. Outside, someone is yelling about a cart stuck in the mud. A dog is barking. The goat is back chewing on your cloak. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of ash wool and sweat. You've only been here a few hours, and already you're wondering how anyone survived this. Part 3. You haven't even finished thawing from your morning ordeal when someone calls out your name or something close to it. You turn slowly because every joint in your body is still recovering from the cold, and a broad-shouldered man with a beard big enough to hide a squirrel waves you over. It's time for breakfast. But not the one you already had earlier. No, that was early meal. This apparently is proper breakfast. You're not sure what the difference is, but judging by the smoke curling from a cauldron suspended over the fire, it involves heat. You're cautiously optimistic. The cauldron is bubbling. The smell is hard to place. Smoky? Yes. Meaty, possibly. Sour? Definitely. Someone stirs it with a paddle large enough to be a boat oar. You peer inside. Something pale and stringy floats past. Could be onions, could also be fish guts. You ask what it is. A woman shrugs. Leftovers. You nod like you understand, but really you're hoping it doesn't mean leftover from last season. A wooden bowl is shoved into your hands. You brace yourself and take a bite. It's thick, viscous, kind of chewy, kind of crunchy, and there's a surprise tang that hits your tongue like a betrayal. You're told it's fermented shark. Of course it is. You try to smile. Someone claps you on the back hard enough to jolt your spine and says, "You're eating like a true Northman." You're not sure whether that's a compliment or a curse. Your eyes water. You tell yourself it's from the smoke. There's also butter. But it's not the soft, golden stuff you know. It's gray and hard and smells like it's been buried for a while. You spread it on the blackened rye bread they hand you, and it crumbles like sandstone. You chew carefully like the bread might punch back. The meal ends with a sour berry drink that somehow manages to be both bitter and sweet, and definitely alcoholic. You don't ask how strong it is because your tongue is still recovering from the shark. A little later, someone asks if you're ready for daily tasks. You're handed a wooden rake and a bundle of what looks like straw and moss. You're directed to the animal pens where a handful of sheep are huddled near a broken fence, looking about as happy as you feel. Your job, it seems, is to gather their waste into a large trough, mix it with the moss, and then stir in ashes from the fire. You're creating something called night soil. You ask what it's for. Fertilizer, someone says cheerfully. You smile and nod again, even though what you're actually doing is ladling a mixture of poop soot and mystery sludge into buckets with your bare hands. The wind shifts. You gag. A passing elder offers you a pinch of something brown to rub under your nose. It smells like pine and tar. It helps a little. As you work, you're joined by a girl about 14 years old, who's twice as fast and 4 times as coordinated. She laughs at your technique, then demonstrates a method that involves flipping the rake like a shovel and flicking the slop over your shoulder into the bucket. You try, you fail, you end up wearing most of it. The goat watches unimpressed. Later, as the sun rises higher, not that it ever gets high in this part of the world, you're called over to a separate building. You're told it's time to tidy the privy, the toilet. Except there isn't one. Instead, you're led to the far edge of the village where a trench runs alongside a rickety wooden fence. The trench is partially filled with dark liquid and covered in thin sheets of frozen crust. You are handed a flat wooden board and a broom made of twigs. You look around. Surely this isn't the restroom. It is. The system is simple. You squat over the trench, try not to fall, and use the board to level things out afterward, and wash your hands in a bucket of pine water. Oh, and instead of toilet paper, a sponge on a stick. You stare at it for a long time, hoping someone is about to say, "Just kidding." No one does. Historians still debate whether Vikings had any consistent sanitation practices. Evidence suggests they did the best they could. Your personal experience suggests that best is a relative term. You finish your duties with a new appreciation for modern plumbing. Also a deep suspicion that the sponge isn't washed nearly often enough. With your chores done, you limp back toward the main longhouse, dreaming of sitting near the hearth and doing absolutely nothing. No such luck. Someone tosses you a bundle of clothes, fur-lined trousers, a linen tunic, and boots stiff with old salt and says, "Dress." You'll freeze otherwise. You're still freezing, but now you'll do it in layers. Putting on Viking clothing is like assembling a puzzle made of itchy fabric and animal bits. There are no zippers, no elastic, and definitely no sizing labels. Everything is tied, wrapped, pinned, or belted with leather straps. You feel like a roast being prepared for the spit. The trousers don't quite fit. The tunic is huge. The boots are a miracle, they almost fit. But the inside is lined with something prickly that may once have had fleas. You adjust everything again and again, trying to mimic the effortless style of the locals, who somehow make fur leggings look dignified. You meanwhile look like a walking pile of laundry that's ready for battle. When you emerge from the hut, someone gives a low whistle and mutters something about fashion forward. You choose to believe it's a compliment. The sun is finally peeking through the clouds, casting long shadows on the snow. The village is alive with movement, children throwing sticks, elders weaving baskets, warriors sharpening axes. You start to feel a little more capable, a little more part of it all. Then someone hands you an axe. Not a small hatchet, a full Viking axe. The kind that splits logs and people in half. They point you toward a pile of frozen wood and say, "Warm yourself up." You raise the axe, you swing, you miss. The axe lodges in the stump. Your shoulder throbs. A boy of maybe 9 strolls over, retrieves the axe one-handed, and splits a log in 2 with a single casual swing. Then hands it back to you. You try again. The axe bounces off the wood, flips backward and nearly takes off your ear. You decide to go back to goat duty. Part 4. The axe was supposed to be the hard part, but now you've been invited to join a hunting party. Invited might be too generous. A grizzled man with one eyebrow and half an ear pointed at you, grunted something about earning your keep, and shoved a bow into your arms. The bow is roughly your height and carved from wood so heavy, it feels like a tree is hugging you back. The string creaks ominously when you try to pull it. A younger man hands you a quiver of arrows and slaps your back. "Don't shoot your foot," he says with a laugh, which frankly feels like foreshadowing. You set out with 5 others marching into the snow-packed forest. The village disappears behind you, replaced by endless trees and a silence so thick it hums in your ears. The men walk in a line, light on their feet, eyes scanning the landscape. You trail behind, stepping on twigs and occasionally slipping on ice. Every so often, someone turns around and glares at you with the kind of expression usually reserved for people who bring musical instruments to funerals. You're told you're hunting elk, big antlered beasts that could crush your ribcage with a single headbutt. Great. The wind picks up. Snow swirls. Your nose has gone from runny to frozen solid. The fur hat they gave you earlier has slumped sideways over your eyes, and you've already managed to walk into 2 branches and a bush that might have been a bird's home. After what feels like a small eternity, the leader of the group, his name might be Rurik or Bjorn, or possibly just Grunt Guy, holds up a hand. Everyone freezes. He crouches low and gestures toward a clearing. You see it too. A massive elk, tall as a horse, grazing between tree stumps, steam curling from its nostrils. Your heart hammers. Someone hands you an arrow. You hold the bow. You nock the arrow. You draw. Your arm trembles. Your fingers slip. The arrow sails wildly to the left, thuds into a tree, and startles the elk, which bolts like it's been insulted. The silence is deafening. Then someone laughs. Then everyone laughs. You consider using the second arrow on yourself. Historians still debate whether hunting was a communal activity or reserved for elites. Today, it's definitely a spectator sport. They don't let you shoot again. Instead, they hand you a rope and tell you to follow. You trudge through brush and thorns and snowdrifts that swallow your knees. At one point, you fall into a shallow creek. It's frozen. Your boots fill with water. You crawl out gasping and watch your dignity float downstream. Eventually, you hear a shout someone spotted fresh tracks. The group fans out. You follow a path deeper into the woods, bow in hand, more for comfort than utility. Then you hear it, a snort. Behind you. You spin. There's nothing there. Then from your left, a shadow. Movement. Heavy breathing. You back up. Your foot sinks into soft snow. You fall. The bough slips from your hand. Then you see it. Not an elk, a boar. Small, furry, angry. It charges. You scramble backward. The rope in your hand tangles around your wrist. You try to yell, but it comes out as a strangled wheeze. Then, miraculously, a spear whistles through the air and lands just shy of the boar's snout. It skids, veers, and bolts into the trees. Your rescuer is a girl with 2 braids and a bow that looks better maintained than your will to live. "You're not very good at this," she says matter-of-factly. You agree. She helps you up. You limp back to camp with your pride in tatters. The party eventually returns with 1 elk and 3 rabbits. You are not credited with any of them. Back at the village, you're told to help with the butchering. You approach the long wooden table where slabs of raw meat are laid out like science experiments. A man with red-stained hands hands you a bone saw. You try to hide your expression. Your job is to separate joints. You don't ask which joints. You just start sawing. The noise is something between chewing and screaming. The smell is worse. One of the ribs snaps with a crack like thunder. You flinch. The butcher laughs. First time you nod. He pats your back and continues skinning the boar you failed to outrun. Later, you're invited again, more forced than invited, to help prepare dinner. You're handed a wooden ladle, a lump of lard, and a fish head. You're not given instructions. You drop the fish head into a pot of water already tinted a worrying shade of gray. The lard goes in next. You stir. The fish's glassy eye stares up at you as the pot begins to bubble. Someone drops a handful of herbs into the mix. You're not sure if it helps or hurts. As the sun begins to set, the village gathers around the fire pit. Steam rises from the cauldron. People huddle close, wrapped in furs and wool bowls in hand. You're served first. A rare honor, or perhaps a test. The stew is thick, oily, and smoky. You take a bite. It's chewy and gritty and not entirely unpleasant. You take another. You stop asking questions. Dinner ends with mead. Sweet, burnt, sharp. It warms your stomach but dulls your limbs. You feel yourself begin to sink. The day catches up to you. The cold, the humiliation, the smell of bone broth in your hair. You stumble toward the hut, peel off your boots, and collapse onto the straw mat. The goat curls beside you like an unwanted pillow. You stare up at the ceiling beam you hit your head on this morning and think, tomorrow can't possibly be worse. Part 5. You wake to the sensation of something damp pressed against your cheek. It smells like old hay goat fur and possibly regret. You open your eyes and find the goat standing over you, chewing your hair with casual indifference. You try to push it away, but your arm refuses to move properly, a numb log attached to your shoulder by sore, twitching muscle. Your entire body aches. Your back feels like it's been trampled by a parade of oxen. Your hands are blistered, your legs are sore, and there's a mysterious pain in your left elbow that you don't remember earning. When you try to sit up, something pops in your spine in a way that's probably not life-threatening, but might be. You glance around the hut. Everyone is still asleep except for an old woman sitting near the fire pit stirring a pot and humming tunelessly. The fire's heat doesn't reach you. Not really. You rub your arms, try to coax feeling back into your toes, and contemplate whether Viking life was a test sent by the gods to separate the bold from the merely curious. You manage to shuffle outside boots, half-laced tunic rumpled belt slung loosely around your waist like a sad sash of defeat. The snow has crusted over during the night. You slip, then catch yourself, then pretend it was intentional. Your first task of the day is milking the cow. You are not qualified for this. The cow, a large beast with mournful eyes and a temper like a storm, is named Ragna. She is not excited to see you. She is in fact already swishing her tail with violent intent as you approach. A boy hands you a stool and a bucket and says, "Be gentle." She doesn't like fear. You are full of fear. You place the bucket sit on the stool and gently reach for Ragna's udder. She kicks the bucket, misses your head by inches, and lets out a low groan of warning. You flinch. Try again. This time, you get a few drops of milk before she farts loudly and steps sideways, planting one enormous hoof squarely on your foot. The pain is sharp and immediate. You yelp. Ragna flicks her tail into your face. By the time someone takes pity on you and finishes the milking, your hair smells like cow. Your foot is bruised and your bucket is still nearly empty. You limp back toward the central hut where breakfast is being served. It's the same as yesterday, and the day before that. A bowl of gray porridge, crusty rye bread, and something that may or may not be preserved herring. You chew slowly, quietly, as the conversation swirls around you in the background. There's talk of a coming storm, a broken cart, and a neighboring village that may have stolen sheep. You tune most of it out except for the bit where someone mentions wolves again. Then comes the surprise. You're summoned for mid-morning courtship duties. You blink. What a young woman grabs your arm, drags you to a bench and starts braiding your hair. With alarming skill. You are not given a choice. This, it turns out, is a local custom. Hair braiding is both a social and romantic gesture depending on how it's done. The braids are tight, complex, and entirely too thorough. You try to ask what this means, but your questions are brushed aside. An old man nearby grins and says, "She braids like that you either marry her or challenge her brother." You hope it's the second one. You've never been good with commitment. The braiding ends with a ribbon tied around your temple in what you're assured is a traditional style. You look like a lopsided scarecrow. Then, to your horror, someone places a garland of dried flowers around your neck. The woman who braided your hair smiles, pats your cheek, and walks away. Everyone stares at you. A teenage boy, tall and scowling, steps forward. "Did she braid you?" he asks. You nod very slowly. "Then we must fight," he says. "This seems extreme." Before you can protest, a circle forms. You're handed a wooden practice sword. Your opponent already has his. He's spinning it like he's auditioning for a Viking boy band. You try to remember everything you've learned so far about combat, which is nothing. The boy charges. You squeak. Your first instinct is to run, but your legs betray you. You swing the sword. It misses by a wide margin and causes you to spin around awkwardly, slipping on the icy ground. The boy taps your shoulder with his blade. It's a light blow, symbolic more than anything. Everyone cheers. You lost, but apparently with enough enthusiasm to avoid disgrace. He pats your back. You'll do? You're not sure what that means, but at least you're still alive. Lunch is stew again. Of course it is. But this time they've added something new: fermented barley cakes. They smell like old shoes and taste like boiled despair. You eat them anyway because the alternative is hunger. After the meal, you're asked to help with something called roof thatching. You climb onto a ladder made from tree limbs tied with rope and are handed a bundle of reeds. Stuff them in tight, the man below says. Otherwise, the snow gets in. You start weaving reeds into the thatch, pressing them between wooden beams. It's awkward. Your hands are cold. The ladder shifts with every movement. At one point, you lose your balance and drop a whole bundle on a child walking below. He picks up a reed, hands it back to you silently, and walks away with the dignity of a tiny chieftain. By late afternoon, the wind picks up again. The sky turns a bruised shade of purple. Snow begins to fall slow and heavy. You head back down the ladder limbs, aching stomach rumbling, and fingers stiff from the cold. That's when they hand you the shovel. Paths drifted in, they say. Clear it. You sigh. Back to work. You spend the next hour clearing a narrow walkway from the central hut to the goat pen. Every shovel full of snow feels like betrayal. The flakes are wet now, clumping heavy, sticking to your cloak and hair. You're soaked, exhausted, barely functional. As you throw one last scoop aside, something glints in the snow. A piece of metal, a Viking coin. You pick it up curious. It's worn and faded, but you can make out a hammer carved into one side. Maybe it's Thor's. Maybe it's fake. You don't care. It's your first real connection to this strange, frozen world. You pocket it. Just as someone yells firewood. You turn. Another task. Always another task. By the time night falls, you've carried 2 armloads of kindling, swept out the main hall, and helped patch a hole in the roof with moss and mud. Your hands are raw. Your back is bent. Your stomach is growling. Dinner is roasted root vegetables, a chunk of goat meat, and sour milk. You don't even taste it. You just eat. Later in the firelight, the elders tell stories of sea serpents, of gods who ride chariots pulled by goats, of battles won and sons lost. You sit, eyes heavy, head drooping, as one of the older men describes the time he punched a bear. Possibly true. Probably not. But you're too tired to argue. You crawl into bed. Or rather, the pile of straw and wool that vaguely resembles bedding. The goat is already there, snoring softly. You curl up, close your eyes, and try not to dream of cow hooves and fish heads. Part 6. You're jolted awake before dawn by a horn blast so loud it could wake the dead. It echoes through the village like a thunderclap wrapped in metal. You spring up, or try to, but the stiffness in your back and legs reduces the motion to something closer to a creaky wiggle. The goat doesn't even flinch. You stumble toward the door, squinting into the still dark sky, and immediately regret leaving the warmth of your bed heap. The cold is absolute. The wind knifes through your clothes like you're wearing nothing but paper. You wrap your cloak tighter, your fingers already going numb, and follow the crowd heading toward the shoreline. It's ship repair day. A small fleet of Viking longships, sleek, narrow, and terrifying, are moored just offshore, their dragon-head prows peeking through the mist like they're hunting something. The beach is lined with barrels of tar ropes, planks, and sacks of tools. A dozen men are already hard at work, some pounding iron nails into the hull, others stripping damaged sections of wood with tools that look like prehistoric torture devices. You're handed a bucket of whale fat. Grease the seams, someone says, pointing at a narrow gap between 2 planks on the side of a boat. You crouch, dip your hand into the congealed lump of fat, and start smearing it along the edges. It's thick cold and smells like someone boiled a whale inside a leather boot. It coats your fingers instantly, leaving a waxy sheen that no amount of scrubbing will ever remove. It also somehow gets into your mouth. You don't know how. You don't want to know. The boat creaks under your touch. You look up. The hull towers above you, blackened by age, patched in places with sealskin and resin. You wonder how this thing stays afloat. A man nearby chuckles as he notices your doubtful expression. They've sailed to Britain and back, he says, and only sank twice. You try to laugh. It comes out like a cough. Your next task is rope work. Thick cords, stiff with salt, must be coiled, tightened, and reknotted around the oars. You don't know the names of these knots. You don't even know how to tie a proper bow without Googling it. You fake it, badly. One of your knots collapses under its own weight. Another somehow tangles your hands into it. A small boy walks by, looks at your work, and says, "My sister ties better knots, and she's 2. Then comes the tar. Buckets of black, sticky pitch are heated over a fire and carried down to the shore. It bubbles like lava. You're handed a wooden ladle and told to patch the cracks. You start applying the tar in long, slow strokes along the inside of the hull, but it drips, burns your fingers, and hardens instantly when the cold air hits it. By the end of the task, your cloak has 3 new holes, and your hands are covered in something that will absolutely ruin any chance of ever shaking hands normally again." Historians still debate the extent of ship maintenance in Viking daily life, but standing here watching steam rise from a vat of tar as the sun rises over the fjord, you understand one thing clearly. These people built their world with muscle blood and every available animal product. Once the repair work is finished, the ship is dragged closer to shore for inspection. You're drafted into the hauling crew. The task is simple. Pull the rope. You lean into the job heels dug into wet sand muscles, screaming as the boat slowly inches forward. Every step is a fight. Your breath frosts in front of you. The others shout in rhythm, heave together, their breath sinking like a chorus of exhausted oxen. You slip, fall, nearly eat sand. But the boat moves. You are now coated in tar sand, seawater, and shame. After a brief meal of dried meat and a few frozen berries, the village shifts into a new rhythm. Trading day. A group of visiting merchants has arrived, pulling sleds loaded with goods, furs, carved antler tools, strange herbs, even small jars of honey. You watch as locals begin bartering, exchanging everything from knives to smoked fish to intricately woven belts. You're invited to join. Someone hands you a spare cloak and tells you to trade for something useful. You step up to a trader point at a small hand axe and offer the cloak. The trader squints at you, spits in the snow, and counters with a dried cod and half a lump of cheese. You try to negotiate. You think you're being clever. 5 minutes later, you walk away with a goat. Not a metaphorical goat, an actual goat. The same goat that chewed your hair yesterday. Apparently, you just bought it. You name him Stinky. He doesn't seem to mind. Now tethered to a 4-legged regret, you make your way back toward the longhouse. On the way, you pass the forge, a dark, smoky shed where a smith hammers iron into rough tools. Sparks fly with every blow. The air smells of ash and scorched leather. You stop to watch, fascinated. The smith, a woman with arms like tree trunks, grunts and says, "You want to try?" You nod. You regret it immediately. The hammer is heavier than expected. The metal glows red, hissing like an angry spirit. You try to mimic her movements, but your swing misses the anvil entirely and sends a shockwave up your arm that makes your molars hurt. She takes the hammer back wordlessly and resumes her rhythm, metal ringing with every strike, like a bell tolling your incompetence. You flee. Back at the longhouse, the meal is being prepared. You're not cooking today, thank the gods, but you're helping with prep. That means sorting through barrels of pickled vegetables, scraping scales off dried fish, and trying to ignore the fact that the kitchen knife is so dull it's more of a suggestion than a tool. Eventually, you're handed a bowl of soup that smells suspiciously familiar. You take a sip. It's the fish head stew again, with barley. Progress. The evening brings another surprise, an impromptu game of Nataliker, which seems to be a mix of field hockey brawling and something that should be illegal. You're handed a wooden stick and pushed into the middle of a frozen field. The ball is released. It flies through the air like a missile. You duck. Too slow. It hits you in the side of the head and bounces into the snow. Everyone cheers. You're not sure why. Someone shouts. Now it's fair. You are immediately tackled by a man twice your size who apologizes by laughing directly into your ear. The game continues for what feels like an eternity. You fall multiple times. Once you're pretty sure you actually bit the ice. Your legs are bruised. Your dignity is in critical condition. When it finally ends, you crawl back to the longhouse under a sky blazing with stars. The aurora dances overhead, green and violet ribbons stretching across the dark like the gods are painting the sky. Inside, the fire crackles. The air is warm. You sink down onto your straw mat, too tired to even remove your boots. Stinky the goat curls beside you. You don't stop him. You stare at the ceiling, which you've now memorized, and whisper to yourself, "I'm still alive." A toddler in the corner mutters something in his sleep. Someone snores. The fire hisses. You've survived another day, but just barely. Part 7. Morning begins once again with the sound of a horn, loud, grating, and unapologetic. You roll over slowly, your body wrapped in layers of stiff wool and aching from yesterday's ship-hauling, rope-tying, and accidental goat purchasing fiasco. Stinky, your new goat companion, is somehow already awake, chewing on something that may have been part of your bedding. You groan. The air in the hut is cold enough to see your breath. Outside, footsteps crunch over fresh snow. Voices murmur in low Norse cadences, and someone shouts about needing help near the granary. You sit up, bones creaking, and mentally list all the parts of your body currently protesting against movement. The list is long. Today's assignment, you're told, is grain duty. This sounds like a break. It is not. You're handed a wooden yoke with 2 heavy buckets suspended on each end, and told to follow a woman named Astrid, who appears to have muscles in her eyebrows. She leads you up a narrow path to a storage shed built halfway into a hill, designed to trap the cold and keep the grain dry. Inside, sacks are piled high, brown linen bundles, tied tight with rough cord, each containing what feels like an entire mountain of barley. You are now part of a chain gang. Lift a sack, hoist it into the sled, repeat. The sled is made of wood, lashed with rawhide, and slides only if you push it with an amount of effort equal to launching a small boat. Astrid lifts sacks like she's carrying firewood. You, on the other hand, manage to trip on your second load and land flat on your back, dusted with grain and embarrassment. A nearby boy, no older than 10, casually drags 2 sacks past you without even breaking a sweat. You brush yourself off, return to the task, and try not to collapse before lunch. Once the sled is full, you and Astrid drag it downhill toward the grinding station, which is a pair of massive stones under a wooden lean-to. Your job is simple. Pour the grain into the upper stone's funnel and turn the crank. It should be easy. It is not. The crank resists you at every turn. It groans, it fights. Your arms burn after only a few minutes. Each rotation sends a soft cascade of flour dust into the air, coating your face, your tunic, and every exposed part of your body. You sneeze, you cough, you keep turning. At one point, a nearby ox sneezes and sprays half the worksite in a fine mist of winter misery. Eventually, you're allowed to stop. You sag against a post, lightheaded and weak. Someone offers you a hunk of dried apple. You accept it gratefully. It tastes like sawdust but smells like salvation. The wind outside howls. Snow begins to fall again, large flakes drifting down in slow spirals, as if the sky itself is bored. You're sent back to the longhouse for a quick lunch. You hope briefly for something warm and filling. Instead, it's cold porridge and half a boiled onion. You eat without complaint. Because the next part of your day is somehow worse. You're told you're going to market, but not to shop, to trade. You're paired with a stooped old man named Leif, who smells like pickled herring and smoke, and together you load a small cart with assorted Viking goods. animal pelts, antler knives, bundles of herbs, and a clay jug full of something Leif calls medicinal spirits, which you're fairly sure could clean an engine. The marketplace is nothing like the neat rows of booths you imagined. It's chaotic, loud, smelly. People shout across the muddy square, brandishing fish bones, bronze trinkets, and in one case, a live rooster painted blue. You stick close to Leif, who seems to speak in grunts and is terrifyingly efficient at making deals. You try to follow his example. You approach a trader selling honey. You point to a jar. You offer a rabbit pelt. The man squints at you, smells. The pelt licks. A finger sticks it in. The honey tastes it, then points at your boots. You shake your head. He gestures again. Apparently, the boots are part of the bargain. You walk away, barefoot, with the honey, and a strong sense of personal betrayal. Leif doesn't say anything when he sees you limping back across the square. He just hands you another bundle and points toward a woman selling herbs. You make the trade, silently, successfully, and feel a spark of pride. Maybe you're getting the hang of this. That illusion ends when a large man with a red beard accuses you of giving him a fake goat tooth charm. You try to explain you didn't know it was fake. He doesn't care. A shouting match begins. Then a small crowd gathers. Someone throws a cabbage. Historians still debate how much violence occurred in Viking marketplaces. Today, it's at least one cabbage's worth. Leif intervenes before things escalate further. He speaks a few low words to the man, produces a small coin, and the situation dissolves. You breathe a sigh of relief and vow to never trade anything with teeth again. As the sun lowers in the sky, you return to the village cart, much lighter boots still missing. The snow has turned to slush. Your feet are frozen bricks. Every step squishes in the worst way. You're rewarded for your efforts with a single dried apricot. You savor it like it's the last food on earth. Dinner that night is a communal event. Everyone brings something, a scrap of meat, a bit of bread, a ladle of stew, some pickled turnip. You contribute a half jar of honey and are declared a hero. For the first time, you're allowed to sit close to the fire alongside warriors and elders, and you feel, however briefly, like part of the village. The stories tonight are bawdy and violent tales of berserkers who bit their shields and charged into battle of sea serpents, spotted off the coast of a man who once drank so much mead he mistook a tree for his wife and proposed marriage. They laugh, they drink, they slap you on the back so hard your ribs rattle. And then, just when you think you'll sleep without incident, you're told you've been selected for night watch. You ask what that involves. They hand you a torch, a wooden whistle, and a small knife. Just keep the sheep safe, someone says. Easy, you think, until you get out to the edge of the village and realize the sheep are already missing. You scan the darkness, eyes straining. The wind whistles low through the trees. The torch sputters. Somewhere in the distance, something cracks a branch, maybe. Or bones. You hear a howl. Not far. Not human. You grip the knife. It feels like a toothpick. The torch goes out. You stand in the dark alone, freezing, surrounded by silence and sheep that may or may not be wolves now. Eventually, after what feels like a lifetime, someone comes to relieve you. You stumble back to the longhouse, half frozen, half dreaming, the knife still clenched in your fist. You collapse onto your straw mat, not even bothering to take off your cloak. Stinky the goat curls beside you like some kind of furry guardian spirit. You stare at the ceiling one last time, your final thought before sleep. This is only day 3. Part 8. You awaken not to the horn this time, but to the sound of arguing outside, deep voices booming through the walls like thunder shaking the earth. You sit up slowly, your body now accustomed to the kind of pain that would normally warrant medical intervention. Stinky, ever faithful, is already awake, head tilted, ears flicking at the commotion. He seems worried. That's not comforting. You crawl to the doorway, still wrapped in your cloak, and peek outside. 2 warriors are facing off in the village square. One is enormous, the kind of Viking who looks like he was carved from oak and then dipped in rage. The other is leaner, younger, and shaking with fury. Between them lies a shattered wooden bowl and a small puddle of spilled mead. You blink. All this over a drinking bowl? Apparently so. An elder steps forward and raises both hands. "We take it to the thing," he says. You're confused. Then someone taps your shoulder and explains that the thing is not a what, it's a who, or rather a where. It's the village assembly, the Viking version of court. And today you're going to witness Viking justice. You're told to put on your best cloak. You look down at yourself, mud-stained, goat-nibbled, tar-streaked. This is as good as it gets. The entire village walks together to a rocky outcrop just beyond the longhouse where a wide, flat stone serves as the council's platform. Everyone stands or sits in a rough circle. The two combatants step forward, glaring at each other like they've been enemies for decades, even if this all began with spilled mead and a broken bowl. A man with a white beard, clearly the village law speaker, raises a wooden staff and begins to chant the legal verses. The words are rhythmic, almost musical, but impossible for you to follow. Then both men are allowed to speak. The younger one accuses the older of being drunk and careless. The older man accuses the younger of disrespecting his age. Someone else shouts something about goats. You're not sure how that fits in, but it seems relevant to them. Historians still debate how much of Viking law was actually codified versus improvised on the spot. Today, it feels like everyone's just winging it with dramatic flair. Finally, the law speaker bangs his staff and declares a judgment the younger man will owe the older 3 bundles of firewood and must replace the broken bowl with one of equal or greater craftsmanship. No one argues. The matter is settled. You think that's it, but then someone steps forward and declares a counterclaim. Apparently, the younger man once insulted the older man's niece's cooking 6 months ago, and that still needs resolution. This goes on for another hour. You sneak away quietly. Back at the village, the rest of your day is scheduled for what they call winter prep, which you assumed was already happening given that you're freezing every minute of your life. But no, there's always more to do. You're tasked with collecting ice, not water. Ice. You're handed a sled and a pair of leather gloves, then directed to a frozen creek where a few villagers are already working. With axes. You spend the next hour chopping slabs of ice from the creek, loading them onto the sled and dragging them back for storage in a root cellar dug into the side of a hill. The cellar is dark, damp, and lined with straw. The air inside is warmer than outside, but not by much. You stack the blocks carefully, wedging them between piles of salted meat and pickled vegetables. You ask someone why the ice is being stored. Summer, he says. You stare. You will not be here in the summer. At least that's what you tell yourself. By midday, your gloves are soaked through your fingertips, numb again, and your arms feel like wet rope. You're given a break, sort of. Time to feed the chickens. This sounds easy. It is not. The chickens are angry. Possibly always. You open the coop door and are immediately mobbed by flapping wings and beady eyes. One pecks your leg. Another steals a breadcrumb from your hand and takes off running. You scatter the feed as best you can, all while fending off what can only be described as a poultry riot. Then you notice the rooster. Massive, crimson-combed, eyes full of vengeance. He charges. You yelp and run, chased halfway across the pen by a bird that is roughly 10% feathers and 90% hate. A teenage girl eventually steps in, scoops up the rooster, and scolds him gently in Old Norse like he's a naughty child. He coos and nuzzles her neck. You are both confused and deeply afraid. Later, you help with tanning. This turns out to involve stretching animal hides over wooden frames and rubbing them with a mixture of salt ash and something called brain paste. You don't ask what kind of brains. You don't want to know. The hides stink. The air stings. Your hands are raw, but after a while you fall into a rhythm scrape rub stretch repeat. It's messy, monotonous, and surprisingly meditative, until someone points out the deer head staring at you from a nearby pike. You take a break. Dinner tonight is a communal pot of what you're told is harvest stew made from dried peas, leftover meat scraps, and something vaguely resembling cabbage. It's thick, hearty, and alarmingly purple. You eat 2 bowls. For dessert, there's a round of singing. You're not ready. The entire longhouse breaks into booming chants, old sagas, drinking songs, lullabies about trolls stealing babies. A woman hands you a drum. You try to follow the beat. You do not. Still no one seems to mind. Someone tosses you a horn of mead. You drink deeply. It burns. It soothes. It fogs your vision just enough to make the singing feel like flying. Then comes the challenge. A man named Torvald, who has arms the size of tree trunks and a beard braided with bones, slams a wooden mug on the table and shouts, "Drinking contest. You are against all logic included. You barely survived the first round. By the third, you're not sure if you're standing or sitting. By the 5th, Torvald is on the floor. You win. They carry you around the room. You are a legend. Then you throw up behind the longhouse. Legend status revoked. The stars overhead swirl. The air is crisp. Your feet are unsteady. You find your way back to the hut, collapsing beside Stinky, who licks your ear affectionately, or maybe he's just looking for spilled stew. You smile. For the first time, you feel something strange. Not comfort, not ease, but maybe belonging. Then you remember you still owe someone 3 bundles of firewood. Tomorrow, maybe. Part 9. Dawn doesn't so much arrive as it crashes into you. The pounding in your skull is more intense than any Viking drumbeat. Your tongue feels like it's been pickled in sawdust and regret. You open one eye and immediately regret that too, because the sunlight bouncing off the snow outside the hut is blinding. You are without a doubt hungover. Stinky the goat is lying beside you, snoring peacefully, smelling faintly of onions. You envy his peace. The rest of the household is already moving. You hear boots stomping, the clang of iron tools, and the soft, rhythmic scraping of wool against wool as someone sharpens a blade. You sit up slowly, bracing for the wave of nausea that hits exactly on cue. You manage to stand wobble to the door and step outside where the cold air slaps you like an offended ghost. There's no time for recovery. Today is fish day. You follow a line of villagers toward the shore where the fjord stretches wide and still its surface frozen in places, its edges misted with the kind of cold that makes your breath come out in clouds. Docked at the edge of the ice are 3 long, flat-bottomed boats, each already piled high with nets, crates, and rows of smoked herring from previous catches. You're handed a spear. You blink. They explain that today isn't just fishing. It's ice fishing. You are not thrilled. First, you help drill holes into the ice using what is basically a giant corkscrew made from iron and desperation. Your gloves are already wet. Your boots are still stiff from yesterday's adventures in poor decision-making. You twist the auger down, ice shavings spraying into your face until you reach water. Then they hand you the spear and point. Just stab the fish, they say. Easy, right? You stare down into the hole where dark water swirls quietly. Nothing happens. You kneel. You wait. You try not to pass out from a mix of hangover and frostbite. And then you see it, a flash of silver. You lunge. The spear hits water with a mighty splash and rebounds upward with the grace of a wet noodle. You miss. You miss 5 more times. On the 7th try, you strike something. You pull the spear up triumphantly, only to find a very surprised and now extremely angry eel flailing on the end. You scream. Everyone laughs. You do not care. You have caught something, and you are now a Viking. Later, they show you how to gut and clean the catch. It is messy, it is smelly, it is strangely satisfying. You scale a fish with a sharpened piece of bone and feel briefly like you might actually be learning something. Then you nick your thumb and drop the fish into the snow. Back to square one. Once the fish are sorted, you help salt them. This involves layering fish and sea salt in a barrel, pressing them down with a heavy stone and leaving them to ferment for weeks. The smell is heroic. The salt stings your cut. Your nose is permanently offended. Historians still debate how much fish contributed to the Viking diet. From the look of things today, it was a lot. You're beginning to think you'll never truly smell clean again. Lunch is a thick slab of smoked trout on rye bread. It's salty, chewy, and deeply fishy. You eat it without complaint. Hunger no longer leaves room for preferences. Afterward, you're summoned by the village seer. This is unexpected. The seer is an elderly woman who lives in a small hut near the edge of the woods. Inside, her space is filled with smoke bones, dried herbs, and the faint smell of burnt resin. She doesn't speak much. She just looks at you for a long time, eyes pale and milky, then gestures for you to sit. You sit. She places her hands on your head, mutters in a language you don't understand, and sprinkles ash into a bowl of fire. The flames rise, shapes appear. Or maybe it's just your imagination. She nods once sharply. Storm, she says. Change. You're not sure if she means weather fate or gastrointestinal trouble. She hands you a pouch of herbs and says, tea, for courage. You thank her. Backward. She corrects you. Later, when you tell someone about your visit, they're impressed. Not everyone gets summoned, they say. She must have seen something in you. You pretend it doesn't terrify you. By late afternoon, the wind picks up. The sky darkens again. Snow flurries begin to fall, swirling like ashes in the air. The village moves quickly. Fires are stoked. Doors are reinforced animals brought closer to the longhouse. You're asked to help bring in the sheep. You and Stinky herd them toward the barn with the help of a wooden staff and a lot of yelling. One sheep escapes. You chase it. You fall. You catch it. You name it Trevor. You are scolded for naming the livestock. As night descends, the storm begins in earnest. The wind howls against the walls. Snow whips through the cracks. The longhouse is warm but loud, filled with creaking wood, rattling shutters, and the constant noise of 30 people trying to exist in the same room. You're assigned to fire maintenance tonight. Your job is to keep the central hearth burning through the night. Every few minutes, you rise from your mat, add a log, poke the embers, and try not to fall into the flames. During your shift, you hear stories, tales of frost giants of the god Loki disguised as a salmon of women who outwitted kings and warriors who were betrayed by dreams. The older children listen wide-eyed. The adults nod, sip mead, and occasionally add dramatic sound effects. Someone asks you to tell a story. You panic. You talk about electricity. They are amazed. You explain microwaves. They are horrified. You describe airplanes. They call you a liar, but they laugh, and for a moment you forget the cold, the bruises, the eel. Later, while the others sleep, you step outside just briefly. The storm has slowed. The snow glows faintly in the moonlight. The village is silent, blanketed in white, peaceful in a way that defies logic. You stand there, breath-misting, heart-beating goat by your side, and think, maybe this is survivable. Maybe you're changing. Maybe you're becoming something harder, wilder, a little more Viking. Then your stomach growls loudly enough to startle a nearby chicken. You go back inside. You lie down. You dream of fish snow and a woman braiding your hair while chanting runes. You don't understand the dream, but you sleep deeply anyway. Part 10. When you open your eyes, something's different. For once, you don't feel like a half-frozen sack of potatoes. Your back still aches, sure, but your fingers respond when you wiggle them. Your legs don't feel like solid blocks of lead. And miracle of miracles, your boots are dry. Maybe the Viking gods are smiling on you today, or maybe they're just saving the worst for later. You stretch carefully. No goat in your face this morning. Stinky seems to have wandered off early, possibly to seek a better sleeping arrangement, or chew something he shouldn't. The fire in the hearth is still glowing, and the longhouse smells of roasted grain and wood smoke. For a moment, just a brief flicker, it feels almost comfortable. But comfort has no place here. You're quickly roped literally into today's event, rope twisting. You're excited. How bad could twisting rope be so bad? The process begins in the great hall where bundles of raw hemp flax and sometimes horsehair are laid out on a large wooden table. The materials are coarse, sticky with sap, and smell faintly like mildew and dried sweat. You're shown how to spin the fibers, separate the strands, and then twist them tightly around a spindle while walking backward at a consistent speed. You fail almost immediately. The fibers snap, you tangle them. You twist your own cloak into the rope accidentally and have to be cut free. A woman with large arms and no visible neck takes pity on you and helps untangle the mess. She says nothing, but her eyes say city folk. Eventually, you start to get the rhythm. Twist, pull, walk. Twist, pull, walk. It's repetitive, numbing, and weirdly hypnotic. Your hands ache, but your mind begins to wander. You think of home wherever that was. You think of running water, hot showers, and mattresses that don't crunch when you move. But part of you notices something else too. You're not being watched as much now. No one's smirking when you fumble a knot or lift something wrong. You're just another body working. That feels significant. You carry your finished coils of rope to the supply shed, stacking them beside crates of salted fish and spare bowstrings. As you walk out, a man hands you a small wooden token with a rune carved into it. For the count, he says. You nod, unsure what to do with it, but pocket it anyway. Then comes the mid-morning announcement. Combat drills. You wince. There's no skipping this one. Everyone participates. Elders, teens, even a woman holding a baby on her hip while swinging a dull axe with one hand. You're handed a wooden training sword again, already scarred with use and slightly warped. It still feels too heavy, too awkward, like it resents being held by you. You're paired with a boy named Kjell who can't be more than 13 but already has arms like braided rope and a face that says, "I've buried things." You try to look confident. You fail. He nods solemnly, then lunges. You're not ready. The first blow lands on your shoulder. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to surprise you. You parry the second strike purely by accident, the edge of your sword catching his in a clumsy sweep that makes a loud clack. Encouraged, you press forward. Your foot catches on a root. You fall flat on your back. Kjell lowers his sword. Better than yesterday, he says. You choose to believe he means that. The rest of the drill involves basic footwork, partner sparring, and a group exercise where everyone lines up and tries to block thrown sacks of grain. It's harder than it sounds. One sack knocks you over. Another bursts on impact, coating you in barley dust and shame. Later, you're invited to test the shield wall. This involves standing shoulder to shoulder with 4 others, gripping a round wooden shield and pushing forward against another row of villagers. It's loud, sweaty, and brutal. The impact sends shockwaves through your arms. Your shield rattles, your back strains, but you stay standing. Afterward, you drop to your knees, panting, and someone claps your shoulder. You didn't fall, they say. That counts. You'll take it. Lunch is late. The meal is boiled turnips and a wedge of hard cheese. It's bland. You chew slowly. A small bowl of berry paste is passed around. You get 1 spoonful, sweet and tart. It's the best thing you've eaten in days. You're halfway through licking the spoon when a horn sounds. Not the wake-up horn, the other horn, the alarm horn. Everyone freezes. Then chaos. Men rush to the armory, grabbing axes, bows, and shields. Women gather the children and herd them toward the longhouse. The elders form a protective ring near the fire pit. You stand in the middle of it all, holding your half-eaten spoon and looking around in confusion. Incoming raiders, someone says. You blink. But this is a Viking village. Yes, they reply. That doesn't mean we don't get raided too. You're told to grab a weapon. You do. It's a spear. It feels wrong in your hands. Everyone rushes to the edge of the village, forming a loose defensive line. You stay near the back because self-preservation is still a thing. Turns out it's not a raid. It's a false alarm. A scouting party of traders had returned early and was mistaken for enemies. Everyone relaxes. Weapons are lowered. Laughs are exchanged. You do not laugh. Your heart is still hammering. Historians still debate how often Viking villages fought each other. Today you learn it doesn't matter. The fear is always there. You're allowed to rest. You collapse near the fire with your untouched spear beside you, staring into the flames, mind racing. That rush, that adrenaline, it shook you. Not because of fear, but because of how quickly you were willing to join the line. Because for a moment you felt like them. Dinner is quieter than usual. Roasted parsnips, barley stew, a slab of dried beef. You eat slowly, listening to the talk around you. News from the traders, a dispute over fishing rights, rumors of spirits seen in the forest. You hear your name once paired with a chuckle. You don't ask. Later, as the fire dies down, the woman who braided your hair sits beside you. She hands you a small carved bone pendant. Protection, she says. You're not useless. You almost smile. She leaves before you can reply. You lie down on your straw mat, Stinky curled at your feet, your fingers still wrapped around the pendant. Tomorrow is another day, but tonight you've survived, and something tells you you just might keep surviving. Part 11. You wake up the next morning before the horn. Not because you're fully rested, because your bladder is making urgent demands. You slip quietly past the sleeping forms around you, stepping over a snoring blacksmith, an old woman bundled like a loaf of wool, and of course, Stinky the goat, who has migrated to your bed and refuses to budge. You push the door open and are greeted by the sting of morning frost against your cheeks and the dull gray sky of another Viking winter morning. It's early still and quiet, except for the soft crunch of your boots in the snow and the distant yawn of a rooster that sounds like it too regrets everything. You find the usual privy spot and handle your business like a seasoned professional now. Shovel snow mounds, strategic squatting, and quick escape. It's amazing how fast the human body learns when survival depends on it. Back at the longhouse, the fire is already going. A teenage boy is poking at it with a stick far too vigorously, and sparks spit toward the rafters. You nudge him gently away before the roof catches fire. A woman hands you a wooden bowl of something hot and vaguely beige breakfast, though you've stopped questioning the ingredients. It's porridge. Again, with a lump of something sweet on top that might be berries or less appetizingly rendered fat. You eat it without hesitation. You've stopped being picky. Today, you're told, is market travel day. Not the local marketplace. This is a trading expedition to a neighboring village. You'll walk, in the snow, with a sled, pulled by you. Uphill, of course. You are given a list of things to carry: dried fish wool, salted butter, and an armful of carved bone utensils. Someone casually throws a sack of smoked eels on top for good measure. The sled creaks ominously under the weight. You rope it to your waist and begin your journey with 4 others. 2 young men, a woman named Freydis, who wears a cloak of raven feathers, and a boy who claims to have wrestled a fox last week. The trek takes most of the morning. The snow is deep, the air is sharp, and the landscape is blanketed in a kind of brutal silence that makes you feel very small. Trees stand like frozen sentinels. The fjord glitters to your right, dark and endless. Ice clings to your lashes. Every breath feels like swallowing needles. But you keep walking. At one point, Freydis tells a story about a village that was cursed for undertrading their fish stock. The curse involved 10 years of spoiled mead and a goat that screamed at night in perfect human language. No one questions the story. You just nod, smile, and check to make sure Stinky didn't follow you. Eventually, you arrive. The neighboring village is both familiar and strange, similar huts. Similar smells, but with unfamiliar faces and a noticeably more aggressive rooster population. You're instructed to wait while Freydis handles the negotiations. You watch from a distance as the locals inspect your goods. One sniffs the butter. Another tastes a bit of wool inexplicably. After several rounds of intense staring and nonverbal grunting, the exchange is complete. You receive a small iron pot, a stack of firewood, some dried mushrooms, and what looks suspiciously like a taxidermied weasel. You do not ask. The walk back is slower. The wind picks up. Snow begins falling again. Thick, slow flakes that settle on your shoulders and eyebrows like the world is trying to muffle itself. The sled is heavy or awkward with the new load. Your legs burn, Your gloves are damp. You are officially one with the cold now. By the time you return, the village is stirring with afternoon activity. Children are chasing each other with sticks. An elder is lecturing someone about stealing firewood. You unload the sled, take a gulp of warm broth someone hands you spiced with onion, and possibly regret and prepare yourself for the second half of the day. Chores, of course. You're sent to help with grain counting, which sounds easy but involves sitting in a smoke-filled hut, while an old man with a single eyebrow hands you scoop after scoop of barley and demands you count aloud. You lose track often. He sighs deeply. At one point, he falls asleep mid-scoop and you just keep counting until he wakes up. Afterward, you help reinforce the roof of the forge, which means holding beams while someone above you hammers nails the size of your thumb into timber that's clearly older than you are. You almost lose a finger twice. Your reward, a dried beet and a nod. Then comes the announcement the neighboring village has invited a few people to a winter feast, and you are shocked to learn you've been invited too. You don't know if this is a trap or a compliment, but you accept. Just before sunset, you set out again, this time on sleds pulled by actual animals. You ride alongside Freitas, who smells faintly of pine smoke and tells you how to politely decline fermented sheep milk. Just make a face and mutter about your digestion. You appreciate the tip. The feast is held in a longhouse twice the size of yours, lit by dozens of small oil lamps and heated by a roaring central fire. You're ushered in, seated among warriors, farmers, and traders. Platters of food are passed around: roast goose-thick barley cakes, steamed root vegetables, honeyed nuts, and a stew that smells too good to ask questions about. You eat like someone who's never seen food before, which by this point you haven't not food that isn't gray or screaming. Then come the toasts. Everyone raises horns of mead, shouting oaths and boasts, and occasionally long, meandering songs about ancestors who once wrestled trees. You're handed a horn. You raise it. You toast to not freezing to death. They cheer. You are beginning to understand Viking hospitality. Then come the challenges. Wrestling, arm wrestling, mead-holding contests. You are roped into the ladder, forced to hold a full horn of mead with one arm extended straight out for as long as possible. You last 38 seconds. Someone pats your back and says, "That's longer than Olaf's goat." You think that's a compliment. As the evening winds down, the musicians start playing. A stringed instrument like a lyre, a bone flute, and a deep hand drum combine into something haunting and wild. People dance in slow, stamping circles. You don't join, but you watch entranced. Freitas sits beside you and mutters, "You're starting to look less like prey." You raise your eyebrows. She grins. Good thing. By the time you return to your village under a starlit sky, you are full sore and buzzing with some combination of mead and exhaustion. Stinky greets you at the gate. You scratch his ears and whisper, "I'm still alive." And somehow, that feels like more than enough. Part 12. The morning fog clings low across the village, curling between huts and drifting like forgotten breath. You rise slowly, body aching in all the familiar places, shoulders, back, legs, and somewhere deep in your soul. Your mouth is dry. Your hair smells of smoke and goose grease, and there's a piece of honeyed nut stuck to your tunic from last night's feast. You leave it there. It's part of you now. Stinky is already awake, nudging your boots with his nose. You nudge back. It's a routine you've come to expect. You're not friends exactly, but there's a grudging partnership forming between you and this goat. A sort of shared understanding that survival here means putting up with each other's smells and occasional stubbornness. Today's task, you learn, is construction. A new family has arrived from another settlement, and the villagers are rallying together to build them a small hut before the next heavy snow. You're handed a hammer-like tool and sent with a group of 6 others toward the edge of the village, where a simple wooden frame has already been erected. The job seems straightforward: add walls. The reality is anything but. You begin by hauling logs. Not firewood, actual support beams thick as your torso and frozen to the touch. They are heavy, they are slippery, they are unforgiving. You and a man named Halvard carry one between you each step, sinking into snow that's turned to slush from the morning thaw. By the time you drop it into place, your gloves are soaked and your breath is a cloud of steam. Next comes fitting the logs into the frame. There's no room for error here. Every beam must slot into place with precision, and the tools to do it are simple wooden pegs, chisels, and a whole lot of elbow grease. You chisel, you tap, you swear under your breath. The logs don't listen. Halvard shows you how to angle the chisel just right. You nod, pretend you knew that, and continue. A child runs past with a basket of nails. Another brings straw for the thatch. The teamwork is chaotic but effective. Everyone has a job and everyone is expected to pull their weight, even you. And for the first time, no one checks your work. No one supervises. They just trust you'll figure it out. You do, kind of. At one point, you accidentally hammer your thumb. Twice. At another, a log nearly rolls off the frame onto your foot, but Freydis catches it in time. She smirks. You still have both feet. That's a win. By mid-morning, the hut has walls and a partial roof. You step back, wiping sweat from your brow, and admire the progress. It's not pretty, but it'll hold. That's all that matters. Then someone calls out, "Time for thatch." You sigh, back to the reeds. You carry armfuls of dried reeds from a storage pile near the river, walking carefully so as not to crush them. Once delivered, you begin laying them across the roof beams, overlapping layers, tying each bundle with coarse rope and wooden pegs. It's slow work, and the wind keeps tugging at your progress, threatening to undo your knots. You don't give up. Even when your arms ache and your back protests, you keep tying, keep layering, keep working. And as the roof begins to take shape, you feel something unexpected pride. You didn't just help today, you built something. Lunch is modest flatbread, dried apples, a strip of smoked venison. You eat sitting on an overturned bucket, hands still dusted with straw and wood chips, watching the villagers pass around a shared jug of water. A little girl offers you a piece of honeycomb. You take it with a smile and offer a clumsy thank you in their language. She giggles and runs away. After lunch, you're surprised with a new task, crafting a simple tool. The village blacksmith has agreed to let you make your own knife. You're led to the forge again, where the fire blazes hot enough to sting your face. The air smells of metal and ash. The blacksmith, an older woman named Brynhild, with soot-streaked cheeks and a voice like a landslide, hands you a small piece of iron and nods toward the anvil. Heat, hammer, quench. You've never forged anything in your life, but you try. You place the iron in the coals, wait until it glows orange, then retrieve it with iron tongs. The first strike with the hammer sends vibrations through your bones. The second glances off the anvil. The third lands true. You fall into a rhythm strike, turn strike. The metal flattens, stretches, reshapes. Brynhild grunts approval. You quench the blade in oil. Steam hisses. The smell is sharp and bitter. You wipe the blade, examine it. It's crude, uneven, but it's yours. Brynhild sharpens it for you, then hands it back wrapped in leather. "Now you're dangerous," she says with a wink. You tuck the knife into your belt. It feels like a graduation. The rest of the afternoon is spent helping transport hay bales from a nearby field. They're heavy, awkward, and prickly. One bursts open as you lift it, showering you in dry stalks. You laugh. No one else does, but you keep laughing anyway. As dusk falls, the village prepares for another quiet night. Fires are stoked. The smell of stew wafts from the longhouse, onions, root vegetables, and something meaty. You catch a whiff of cloves and sage. Dinner is rich tonight. Warm, comforting, served in carved wooden bowls and eaten beside neighbors who no longer glance at you with suspicion. You share your knife just briefly with a young boy whose spoon has cracked. He beams and thanks you. After the meal, there's music, not the wild celebration of a feast, but soft, quiet songs played on stringed instruments and low flutes. The villagers sit in a circle, faces lit by firelight, some humming, some dozing, some just watching the flames dance. You sit with them. Someone hands you a piece of wood and a knife, your knife. You start carving. You don't know what just shapes lines, something to keep your hands busy, while your heart processes the calm. Later, Freydis sits beside you again. She says nothing, neither do you. But the silence is warm. When it's time to sleep, you curl up beside Stinky Blade, tucked under your mat like a talisman, and whisper to yourself, not for comfort, but as a reminder, I made something today. And you sleep like someone who finally knows what they're becoming. Part 13. Today begins not with horns or frostbitten toes, but with shouting, urgent, frantic shouting. You jolt awake, heart-thudding hand reaching instinctively for the crude knife you forged just yesterday. Stinky leaps to his feet with a bleat of alarm and promptly crashes into a wooden bucket. Water spills, straw flies. Someone yells, "Fire," you're already moving. Outside, smoke curls upward into the pale morning sky, thick and black, rising behind the grain storage hut. You sprint, joining a dozen villagers who are already forming a chain line from the well, hauling water in sloshing wooden buckets. Freydis is there, sleeves rolled up, face streaked with soot. She doesn't shout, she points. You grab a bucket, pass it down the line. Grab another, pass again. The fire is small but stubborn, chewing through the thatch and crackling like a wild animal. You can feel the heat even from here. One brave soul douses it directly with a full barrel, another beats the edge with wet sheepskin. After 20 tense minutes, it's over. The roof is ruined, the walls scorched, but the grain is safe. Everyone breathes again. You collapse onto a nearby log, coughing from smoke, inhalation hands shaking slightly. Stinky appears from behind the hut with someone's leather glove in his mouth. You take it from him and toss it aside. Someone claps your shoulder. "You ran fast," says the man from the forge. "That's good. Viking fast." You nod. You'll take the compliment. The rest of the morning is devoted to cleanup. You haul burnt debris, salvage uncharred planks, and sweep ash into piles for disposal. It's dirty, exhausting work, but it's the kind of work you now expect. Then the snow begins to fall again. Not flakes. This is a storm. The wind howls like a hungry wolf, sweeping through the village with blinding gusts. Visibility drops. Huts are quickly barricaded, windows sealed with furs and ropes strung between buildings to help people move through the whiteout. You're ordered inside. Everyone is. A longhouse storm day. You expect boredom. You're wrong. The hearth is burning high, stacked with the driest wood available. Around it, villagers huddle with their tools, their wool, their tales. Freydis is carving bone ornaments. Brynhild is repairing a broken spearhead. Children sit in a circle, playing some version of dice with carved stones and shouting nonsense. You're invited to join a game. It's called Nefatafel, something between chess and strategy war. You sit across from a girl with freckles and eyes like storm clouds. She teaches you the rules quickly. Attackers surround a king, defenders must escape. You lose, repeatedly. But by the fourth match, you actually trap a piece without it being by accident. She raises an eyebrow, impressed. Someone nearby begins telling a tale. A saga. The storyteller is tall, broad, with a voice that rumbles low and deep, rising and falling like waves on a dark sea. He speaks of a hero named Eirik, who sailed to a cursed island, fought a serpent made of ice, and returned with a harp that sang by itself. The room quiets, the fire crackles, and time slows. You listen. You don't understand every word, but you understand the rhythm, the cadence, the gravity. Stories here aren't entertainment. They're blood. They're glue. They're memory. Later, you help mend a broken boot. Someone lends you their leather punch and shows you how to lace the sides together using sinew. It's slow work, tedious, but satisfying. When it's done, the boot is whole again. You hand it back with quiet pride. The owner grins and says, "Better than before." By mid-afternoon, the snow still hasn't stopped. The village remains blanketed, cut off from the outside world by white silence. There's an eerie beauty to it. You find yourself staring out a small window slit, watching flakes swirl like ash, thinking not for the first time that this place is brutal and breathtaking in equal measure. The talk shifts to dreams. One elder says she dreamt of a red sky and a giant raven flying backward. Another claims he saw his grandfather fishing in a well. The seer, silent until now, mutters something about omens and pours herbs into a cup of hot water. You're handed a mug too thick bitter tea made from roots and bark. You drink it slowly, grateful for the warmth. Then for no reason at all, someone suggests a song. Not a chant, not a saga. A real song, low and melodic, wordless at first. A woman begins, voice thin but strong, humming a tune that winds around the rafters like smoke. Others join layering harmonies, creating something haunting and hollow. You don't know the words, but the sound sinks into your bones. You hum along, badly. They smile anyway. Evening arrives without warning. The storm hasn't let up. You're told to stay inside again tonight. No chores, no watch duty, just rest. Dinner is cooked slowly over the fire root stew with bits of sausage and wild herbs. There's fresh bread, too soft warm, slightly burnt on one side, but a miracle all the same. You eat your fill, and then some. Later you carve. You take a small chunk of driftwood from a bin near the wall, sit near the hearth, and begin shaping it. At first you don't know what it's becoming. Just notches, lines, curves. But gradually a form emerges, a tiny goat. Stiff legs, big eyes, lopsided horns. You look over at Stinky, who's curled up by the fire chewing on someone's sock. Inspiration, you suppose. You pass the figure to the child who gave you honeycomb. She squeals, hugs your leg, runs off. You're not sure why that makes you feel like crying. You sleep early. The storm rages on, but the fire is hot. Your cloak is dry, and your body has finally stopped aching like it once did. You listen to the wind howling outside and think of the walls you helped build, the beams you helped raise, the stories you heard. You think just maybe you belong here now. You drift off with that thought in your chest, warm and flickering. Part 14. The next morning, the storm is gone. Just like that, you step outside into a world transformed. The village is wrapped in thick, untouched snow, glittering beneath a clear blue sky. Smoke rises lazily from chimney holes. Frost clings to branches like spun glass. And for once it's quiet, no shouting, no horns, not even the clatter of morning chores. Just the sound of boots crunching softly across ice and the occasional muffled bleat from a distant sheep. You draw a breath so sharp and clean it almost stings your lungs. Freydis approaches her hair braided tight, a bow slung across her back. "We're going hunting," she says. You glance down at your boots, still cracked but repaired with fresh bindings, and nod. A small group gathers near the edge of the village. Freydis, two young men you've seen sparring with axes, and an older man who's missing 3 fingers, but strings his bow with ease. You're handed a satchel of dried meat, a skin of water, and a long wooden staff. Not a weapon, but a walking stick, a kind gesture. You begin the trek into the forest. The snow is deeper here, crusted with ice. Each step is a test of balance. Your breath mists in front of you like a trailing spirit. No one talks. Freydis raises her hand occasionally to signal when to slow, when to crouch, when to stop altogether. Her presence is silent command, and you follow it instinctively. You're hunting deer today. Fresh tracks dot the path, cloven prints, sharp and deep, leading west toward a narrow valley. You descend carefully, every tree root and hidden stone threatening to undo you. At the bottom, the world feels hushed, like the snow absorbed all sound. Suddenly, movement. Freydis spots it first. She gestures 2 fingers toward her eyes, then to a ridge. You see it, a doe, graceful, still, head raised. Freydis draws her bow slowly, the string creaking. You hold your breath. She exhales, looses the arrow. It hits. Not fatal, but enough. The deer bolts. You run. The forest blurs past snow, whipping your face branches, clawing at your arms. You follow the trail of broken limbs, dark drops staining the white. Up a hill, over a frozen stream. Your heart pounds like war drums in your chest. Then you find it. The deer collapsed beside a fallen log, breathing shallowly. Freydis arrives seconds later, kneels, whispers something in Old Norse. A brief moment of respect. Then clean and swift, she ends its suffering. You've never seen anything die like that before. Quiet. Necessary. There's no celebration, only motion. Ropes are tied. Knives are drawn. The carcass is skinned, bled, and wrapped. You help lift it onto a sled. It's heavy, awkward, but you don't drop it. Back at the village, you're greeted with nods of approval. You carried your weight today. You clean your hands, your boots, your knife. You don't speak about the hunt. Later, Freydis tosses you something wrapped in cloth. You unwrap it, a sliver of antler carved with a rune you don't recognize. For steadiness, she says. You nod. In the afternoon, the mood in the village shifts. Children are dressed in new cloaks. The longhouse is swept. Torches are lit earlier than usual. There's a buzz in the air, anticipation. You ask someone what's happening. Tonight, they say, is the midwinter vigil. You've heard whispers of it before, an old rite, older than even the oldest elder can remember. A night to honor the passing of the darkest days and welcome the return of light. You're told to wear your warmest clothes and bring anything you made with your own hands. You choose the small bone pendant you carved days ago. You polish it gently, tie it with a strip of cloth, and tuck it inside your tunic. At sunset, the entire village walks to a clearing just beyond the last fence, where a circle of stones marks an ancient site. Fires are lit in iron bowls. The air smells of pine and burning resin. A drum begins to play, slow, steady, like a heartbeat echoing through the earth. The seer steps forward, robed in black and gray, her voice rising in song. It's not language, it's something older. A tone, a vibration. You feel it more than hear it. Everyone listens. Then one by one, villagers step forward to place their offering in the fire-carved tools, scraps of cloth, dried herbs, even food. Each gift is tossed gently into the flames, accompanied by a murmur or a whisper. Your turn comes. You hesitate. Then step forward, remove the pendant, and drop it into the fire. The flames flare briefly. No one says anything, but someone touches your shoulder as you walk back. You sit and watch. The stars above are brilliant, so many, so clear. It's like the entire sky cracked open. You tilt your head back and breathe. Freydis sits beside you. You're still here, she says. You nod, barely. She grins. That's enough. The vigil lasts into the night. Stories are told, songs are sung, and at some point someone begins to dance, slow, circular arms outstretched. Others join. You don't. Not yet. But you tap your foot, and you smile. Hours later, you return to the village. The fires are low, the wind gentle. You curl into your bedroll beside Stinky, who smells strongly of smoke and mutton but doesn't seem to care. You whisper not to him, not even to yourself, but just into the dark. I didn't think I'd last this long. No one answers, but something deep inside you knows you will. Part 15. You awaken before sunrise, not from noise or cold, but from something deeper, an instinct now woven into your bones. The longhouse is quiet. Only the fire whispers, casting soft shadows against the wooden walls. Stinky is curled near your legs, radiating warmth and the faint odor of old cabbage. You rise slowly, not rushed, not sore the way you used to be, just quietly alert, as if your body has finally caught up to this life. Outside, the world is still dark. The stars are fading, and the snow crunches gently under your boots. You take a deep breath, and it no longer burns. It fills. You watch your breath curl upward, and for the first time, it doesn't feel like you're surviving. It feels like you belong. This morning, you're sent to the riverbank. The ice has thinned, and it's time to fetch water again. Real water, not chipped ice or boiled snow. You carry buckets and a long iron spike. It takes 5 strikes to break through the ice, and when the hole opens, water glimmers beneath like a secret world. You dip the buckets carefully, working beside 2 others, and for a while no one speaks. Just the sound of water ice breath. Back at the longhouse, breakfast is different. Someone has made flatbread filled with dried berries and pressed it into soft cakes. There's boiled milk slightly sweetened with pine sap. You eat slowly, listening to the quiet shuffle of others, waking up grateful for the silence, the food, the stillness. Then a new kind of work. You're tasked with helping carve a runestone. It's an honor, you're told, reserved not for warriors or elders, but for those who've become part of the story. You follow a small group to the edge of the village, where a flat slab of granite leans against a snowdrift. The surface has been smoothed, and rough lines sketched in charcoal begin to take form, the story of a hunt, a storm, a fire survived. And near the bottom, a goat. You smile. You're handed a chisel and a hammer, and someone points to the corner where your task begins. It's slow, delicate work. You trace the outline of a tree, first tapping gently to chip away the stone. Each stroke is permanent. Each movement leaves a mark. You find yourself holding your breath with every tap. Freydis watches from a distance, arms crossed, a faint smile on her face. You don't say anything. You just keep carving. After hours of careful work, the day shifts. Today there will be games. Not chores, not rituals, not training, just games. Children run wild faces painted with ash and red clay. Elders sit on stumps watching like judges of an ancient trial. You're invited to compete, and this time no one laughs when you step forward. The first game is sled pulling. Not with snow, with people. You're paired with a skinny boy and tasked with dragging him across a path packed hard with ice. He hoots like a raven as you run, arms flailing, and you both collapse in laughter at the end. You lose, but no one cares. Next is stone lifting. There are 3 stones, one the size of a goat, one the size of a sack of grain, and one the size of your failure. You manage the middle stone, lifting it with a grunt and locking knees, holding it long enough to earn a few claps and a nod from Brynhild. You don't attempt the largest. Even Stinky knows better. The final game is firewalking. Sort of. It's a race over hot ash pits, long extinguished fires that still steam under layers of soil. You're told it's safe. You're told it's fun. You're told not to fall. You fall. Twice. But you get up, laugh, and finish anyway. After the games, a feast begins, not the kind for gods or visiting chieftains, but for the people. Roasted root vegetables, dried sausages, fried fish cakes, and what might be fermented apple slices served in warm broth. There's singing, but not like before. This is louder, freer. Someone claps to the rhythm. Someone beats a drum with a spoon. A little boy grabs your hand and pulls you into a spinning circle of dancers, and you don't resist. You dance. Badly. Joyfully. Later, Freydis brings out a wooden box. Inside are gifts, simple ones. A comb carved from bone. A small iron key. A necklace strung with polished shells. These are passed out without ceremony, just quiet gratitude. You receive a strip of cloth embroidered with runes. You'll need this when you leave, Freydis says. You pause. Leave. She nods. The snow will melt. The rivers will thaw. The ships will sail. You knew this. You just didn't expect to feel anything about it. That night, as the village settles into rest, you sit outside alone for a while, staring up at the sky. The stars are clear. The cold no longer frightens you. The silence no longer feels empty. Stinky nudges your arm. You scratch his ear and whisper, "Not yet. You'll leave when it's time, but not today." Today, you carved stone. Today, you danced. Today, you were Viking enough. Part 16. The thaw begins not with warmth, but with sound. A slow dripping from the rooftops. the crackle of ice loosening its grip on the edge of the well, the soft hiss of snow collapsing under its own weight. Winter is not gone, but it's changing, melting quietly under a sun still pale but steady. You notice it as soon as you step outside. The air has softened. Your boots don't crunch so sharply, and the wind carries more scent than sting. Fridas is already awake, dragging a sled across the clearing, her raven feather cloak replaced with a lighter wool shawl. She calls to you without turning her head. Time to help move the fish stores. You nod and follow. The dried fish smoked over long weeks and stacked in bundles is to be transferred from the smokehouse to a new storage pit dug deep into a shaded grove. You and 3 others begin the work. The fish are stiff, some wrapped in woven grass, others strung together by their tails. The smell is overwhelming, strong, oily, and oddly comforting. You carry the bundles carefully, ducking under low branches, stacking them gently into the earth-lined pit. There is no rush. The work is slow and methodical, the kind that settles the mind. Afterwards, you return to the longhouse where repairs are underway. The storm weeks ago had loosened some beams, and today's sun offers a rare chance to fix them before spring rains arrive. You climb the ladder hands gripping the rough wood and begin retying the thatch. It's strange how your fingers seem to know what to do now. You no longer fumble. You no longer hesitate. You just do. From above, you see the village from a new angle. Children chasing chickens. An elder mending a torn sleeve by firelight. Stinky trying to climb into the grain store again. You laugh quietly and keep working. At midday, the call for meal echoes across the square. You climb down, wipe your hands, and join the others near the fire. Today's food is barley stew with a slab of salted pork. There's also a flat cake sweetened with pine syrup, likely left from the vigil. You eat it all. No one talks much. Everyone's listening to the snow drip and the wood creak, and the river, yes, the river starting to crack open again. That afternoon, something unexpected happens. A visitor arrives. A man cloaked in dark wool and carrying a travel-worn pack enters the village from the south trail. His boots are crusted with mud, his beard long braided and streaked with gray. He walks with the slow confidence of someone who's seen far too much. A dozen heads turn. The blacksmith rises. The seer steps out from her hut. There's a pause, a long, cautious pause, and then someone says, "He's from the sea village." It's all the explanation anyone needs. He speaks softly, shares news. A whale carcass washed ashore near his home. The snows melted faster by the coast. A merchant ship came early bringing iron tools and dark spices, and there's rumor of conflict to the east. No one says war, but the word hovers in the air anyway. That evening, a quiet council is held, not with shouting or argument, but with low voices and shared glances. You're not included, but you're not excluded either. You sit near the wall listening, learning, watching as the future of the village shifts by candlelight. Freydis leans over and whispers, "They're deciding whether to send scouts after the melt." You nod. You understand. Afterwards, she walks you back to the longhouse. The night is cold again, sharp, but not biting. The stars are faint behind a thin mist, and somewhere in the distance you hear the river running free again. The sound is like breath returning. Inside, the fire crackles. You sit by it and take out your knife, the one you made, and begin to sharpen it. Slowly, not because it needs it, because it feels like the right thing to do. Stinky settles beside you with a heavy sigh, as if he too has accepted that the snow can't last forever. Someone asks you, "Will you leave when the ships come?" You don't answer right away. You look at the blade in your hand, at the scar on your knuckle, at the runestone carving you helped complete just yesterday, at the bit of cloth tied around your wrist embroidered with the symbol for steadiness. "I don't know," you say. And it's true. You lie down later with your cloak wrapped tight, the embers of the fire glowing low. You listen to the sounds of sleep around you, breathing, snoring, the soft shuffle of someone shifting on straw. You stare at the ceiling. You think about rivers, about thaw, about the way something hard and frozen can slowly, quietly begin to move again. You don't dream that night. You just rest deeply, because something in you knows without question that the hardest part is no longer staying. It's deciding whether or not to go. Part 17. The next day begins with something new birdsong. Faint, tentative, almost shy but unmistakable. You step outside and hear it clearly. A single note, then another, then silence. But it's there. After months of howling wind and cracking ice, the world is starting to whisper again. The snow is thinning across the rooftops. Mud appears beneath the trees. A trickle of water runs down the center of the village path, carving its way like a soft declaration that winter is releasing its grip. You're told to help with the boats. The river is waking, and though it's still too soon to sail, the preparations begin now. You join a group of villagers hauling long, curved planks to the shipyard, really just a cleared stretch of land beside the fjord, where 3 Viking longships rest under thick covers of hide and snow. The boats look tired. Their hulls are streaked with soot and resin, their ropes stiff and crusted with salt. But they are beautiful, sleek, restless. You're handed a cloth, a jar of whale oil, and a scraper. Your task: clean the joints between the hull planks, check the bindings, smooth the edges where water might try to slip in. It's quiet work, but satisfying. The sun hits the surface of the wood just enough to warm your hands. You work slowly, carefully, feeling every notch and groove, every patch once scorched or cracked and now repaired. These boats have lived. They've bled salt and fire. You understand that now. As you work, someone hums nearby, a low tune, rhythmic and steady. You match your movements to it without realizing. Scrape, wipe, smooth. The rhythm sinks into your muscles. At midday, you sit with the others near the edge of the dock and eat dried apples, a hunk of cheese, and flatbread soaked in brine. The man beside you, a weaver turned shipbuilder, tells you about his first raid across the narrow sea. You expect glory. Instead, he describes seasickness, a cracked rib, and 2 stolen chickens. You both laugh. Later, you help repair the sails. The cloth is thick, made of heavy wool soaked in animal fat. It smells terrible. It's heavy, but it catches the wind like nothing else. You help patch tears sitting cross-legged beside 3 women who sew faster than you thought possible. One of them shows you how to knot thread so it won't slip even in the rain. You practice 3 times. On the 4th, she nods. You feel like you've been knighted. As evening comes, the wind picks up again, but it's no longer sharp. It brushes past your face, not through it. You walk back to the longhouse boots, wet but light. Your hands are sore, your back aches, but it's not the pain of survival. It's the ache of building. Inside, the fire is already going. The meal is simple boiled grains, pickled roots, a single smoked sausage split 4 ways. You eat slowly, listening as stories pass between mouths like old tools worn useful familiar. One of the elders retells the tale of the wolf sisters who crossed the mountains barefoot, carrying fire between them. You've heard it before, but tonight, you understand it differently. When the meal ends, Freydis pulls you aside. They've chosen the scouts, she says. You nod. She hands you a list: names, supplies, routes. She doesn't tell you you're going, but she doesn't tell you you're staying either. That night, you sit by the fire sharpening your knife again. Not because it needs it, but because your hands need something to do. Around you, others do the same. Mending, sewing, packing. Stinky lies beside your feet, chewing something that might have once been part of a sandal. You think about the river, about the sea beyond it, about the place you came from, about whether it's still there, whether you still want it. Then you think about this place, about the people, the stories, the fire. You go to bed without answers. But for the first time, you don't need one. Because whether you leave or stay, you know now what you're capable of. You know how to split logs, carry meat, survive storms. You know how to swing an axe, repair a sail, catch a fish, and smile through cracked lips and bleeding thumbs. You know how to live. And that perhaps is what this place was meant to teach you. Part 18. You wake to mist. Not the hard, punishing cold of winter, not the blinding white of snow, but a low, rolling fog that wraps itself around the village like a blanket. Everything feels quieter, softer, as if the world is holding its breath. You step outside, boots sinking slightly into the damp earth. No crunch of ice, no wind, just the soft drip of melting snow from the thatched roofs and the distant creak of wood adjusting to the thaw. The fjord is almost entirely free of ice now. Thin sheets float lazily along the banks, breaking apart with quiet snaps. One of the boats has been uncovered. Its dragon-headed prow rises into the fog like the memory of something ancient. You're called to help again, this time to load supplies. Not for a raid, not even for trade, for travel. Today you help prepare for departure. There's no ceremony, no final speech or farewell feast, just work. You carry bundles of dried meat jars of pickled cabbage ropes coiled tight and sealed in leather. Spears, cloaks, fish hooks, tar. Everything a boat might need for survival. You pack them carefully into the hold, wedging soft goods between heavy items to keep them from shifting. Freydis checks each bundle twice. She's not leaving. She's staying to watch the spring planting. But she says nothing of it. Just keeps moving, nodding once at you as you load the last crate. When it's done, you sit on the edge of the dock and eat a single boiled egg and a bit of cheese. Beside you, a man named Rurik sharpens an axe and speaks of the sea like it's a living thing. It doesn't hate you, he says, but it doesn't care whether you come back. You nod. Back at the longhouse, there's quiet work. A boy is carving a new flute. An older woman spins wool, her fingers moving in rhythm with the spinning wheel. Stinky sleeps near the fire, snoring softly, a ragged bit of rope in his mouth. You sit and repair your cloak, stitching a tear with hands that no longer fumble. Every pull of the needle is a memory. Every knot a lesson learned the hard way. That evening you meet with the others who will be leaving. There are 7 of you, some younger, some older. One has traveled to 3 continents. One has never left the valley. You speak little, but the silence feels easy, shared. No one knows what they'll find beyond the fjord. They just know it's time to go. Later, the seer visits you. She doesn't say much, just hands you a pouch of herbs and a folded piece of cloth. Inside it is a rune carved from antler, the same symbol as before: steadiness. You bow your head. She nods once and disappears into the fog like a shadow that never needed light to exist. You spend the night awake, not because of fear, because of stillness. You walk the village one last time, past the goat pen, past the forge still warm, past the runestone you helped carve. Your hand rests on its edge. The lines are familiar, rough, imperfect, true. You run your fingers over the shape of the goat you carved there weeks ago, smiling softly. No one asked you to do it. No one painted over it. They let it stay. Back inside, you sit by the fire. Freydis joins you without a word, handing you a bowl of warm broth and a small piece of bread soaked in honey. You eat together, staring into the flames. When the bowl is empty, she leans back and says, "You were softer before. I liked that person too, but I like this one more." You don't reply. There's nothing to say. She pats your shoulder and leaves you there. The fire crackles. Stinky lifts his head briefly, then settles back down. You stroke his neck once slowly and whisper, "I'll find you again someday." Before dawn, you gather your things, cloak, satchel, knife, and the small token you carved weeks ago. The longhouse is silent, but when you step outside, you find the village waiting. Not everyone, just enough. They don't speak. They just stand along the path to the dock, hands tucked into sleeves, eyes watching. Some nod. Some offer small waves. One child runs up and hands you a pebble shaped like a heart. You take it. It's warm from her palm. At the dock, the boat rocks gently against the water. The others are already aboard. You turn once to look back, not because you're unsure, because you want to remember. The smoke curling from chimneys, the trees heavy with dew, the goat-shaped smear in the snow. You step onto the boat and do not look back again. Part 19. The boat pushes off quietly, gliding across the glassy surface of the fjord. There is no wind, only the gentle drip of thawed water from the oars as they dip and pull. You sit near the center, wrapped in your cloak, watching the village fade into the fog. The dragon-headed prow cuts through the mist, silent and watchful. Behind you, the shoreline narrows, then disappears. The world is suddenly water, air breath, and motion. No one speaks. Each of you rows in rhythm, slow, steady, efficient. Your hands blister again. You don't mind. The pain is familiar now, a marker of effort, of purpose. By mid-morning, the fjord opens into the sea. The waves are small but persistent, lapping at the hull like curious fingers. The wind rises slowly, tugging at your hood. Someone adjusts the sail. The boat leans, creaks, steadies. You grip the side and inhale deeply, the salt burning in your lungs in a way that feels strangely clean. Around you, the other travelers settle into their tasks. One sharpens a spear, another mends a leather strap. The youngest hums to himself the same tune that echoed in the longhouse just nights ago. You don't know the words, but the melody follows you like an echo. The hours stretch. You pass cliffs streaked with black ice rocks scarred by ancient winds. Seabirds cry above. Below, shadows glide beneath the water. Perhaps fish, perhaps something else. The sea is not threatening, but it is endless. You begin to understand the stories, the warnings, the awe. That night you make camp on a rocky shore. There's no village here, just a ring of firelight and the hiss of wind across stone. You eat smoked meat, hard bread, and boiled roots, your bowl resting on your knees as you stare at the flame. No one says much, but no one is alone. Afterwards, someone passes around a small flask of strong drink. You sip it once and cough violently. They laugh. You laugh too. Later, as you lie beside your pack under a sky smeared with stars, you think about the village not as a place you left, but as a part of you that walks beside you now. Its silence, its weight, its warmth. The next days pass like chapters. You stop at a coastal farmstead, trade a bundle of salt-dried fish for fresh eggs and berries. The woman there recognizes one of your companions and invites you to sit in the sun. You do. You drink hot goat milk from a wooden cup and listen to gulls screaming overhead. For a moment, it feels like peace. Later, the boat stops at a cliffside harbor carved into black stone. Traders meet you there, rough men with silver rings and eyes like flint. You watch as knives are bartered for seal oil cloaks for combs made of bone. One man offers you a flute in exchange for your knife. You decline. The knife stays. It means more. One night, as you drift into sleep on a soft patch of moss, the oldest member of the crew tells a story about a man who left his village to find the sun. He walked east for 3 years. When he found it, he realized it had always been behind him. Everyone laughs, but quietly. Eventually, you reach the wide mouth of the sea. The land behind you narrows into memory. The fjords become islands, then disappear altogether. Ahead is open water. The sail is raised again. You feel the boat lift, sway, and begin to dance with the waves. This time, you are not afraid. You take the tiller when asked. You steer. You hold your course even as the waves rise, as the sky darkens, as rain begins to fall. You pull your cloak tight and lean into the wind. The salt stings your eyes, but you don't look away. You know now that the sea doesn't hate you, but it will test you. And you are ready. That night you make landfall on a distant shore, a strip of sand and stone backed by a forest so dense it swallows the moonlight. You light a fire with practiced ease. You gather wood without being told. You help pitch the tarp before the rain sets in. You eat in silence. Before bed, you sit alone for a moment, your knife in hand, your pack beside you. Inside it, the carved pebble from the girl, the rune of steadiness, the cloth Freydis embroidered with her quiet hands. You lay them out in a small circle beside you like a tiny shrine, then gather them again. You whisper, "I'm not lost anymore." No one hears. But the wind shifts. And in that moment, you know something sacred. You did not just survive the Viking village. You became it. Part 20. By now, rowing has become second nature. You no longer think about the rhythm. Your hands move, your back flexes. Your breath falls into step with the oars. At first, you struggled to last even half a day on the water. Now your body responds without resistance. You eat salt-dried cod with numb fingers, sleep on damp earth without complaint, and stand night watch with your eyes sharp and steady. You don't ask what comes next. You just do. This morning the sea is choppy. Not violent, but restless. The wind presses hard against the sail, forcing the crew to brace with every gust. Spray slaps across your face, cold, sharp. You wipe it away and keep rowing. The horizon is smeared with clouds, but the water is dark alive. Somewhere ahead, you're told, lies a river, one that snakes through forest and field toward a distant settlement, a place of trade, maybe even a new home. As the boat rounds a headland, the coastline changes. Tall cliffs give way to low rolling hills. You see green, real green. Not the hard pine needle green of winter's edge, but soft mosses, sprouts of grass, and tiny white flowers peeking through the thawing ground. A gull cries above, then another. You point to a cluster of dark shapes in the distance, huts perhaps, or boats pulled high onto the shore. The crew rows harder. By midday, you make landfall. It's not a village, just a camp. A dozen structures made of driftwood and hide lashed together with twine and prayer. Smoke curls from a fire pit. Children run barefoot through the mud. A woman with one arm greets the group with a nod and offers dried berries and a bowl of broth thick with roots. You sip carefully. It tastes like garlic and earth and something older, something good. While the others trade goods, you wander toward the trees. They are taller than any you've seen, bark as black as ash leaves just beginning to unfurl. The forest hums with life. You crouch near a stream, watching tiny fish flicker between the stones. Your reflection stares back, unfamiliar but whole. The beard is thicker now, the eyes sharper, the posture straighter. A boy from the camp approaches and asks where you're from. You start to answer, then pause. You don't know what to call it. A memory, a forge, a test. You simply say, "North." He nods and points to your knife. "Did you make that?" You hand it to him. He holds it with reverence, then returns it. "I want to make one," he says. You show him how to hold it, just briefly, just enough. That evening a storm threatens. Not a fierce one, just a heavy one. Rain lashes the roof of the shelter as you huddle inside, listening to the crackling fire and the soft rhythm of water on hide. Someone plays a bone flute. The melody is simple, winding, lonely. You carve as you listen. A scrap of driftwood in your hands becomes something, a fish maybe, or a serpent. You're not sure. You just keep working. Your fingers move with patience, precision. When it's done, you toss it into the fire. Not because it's bad, but because it was never meant to last. The next morning, the rain is gone. The air smells of wet earth and pine. The boats are loaded again. The river is near now, and the plan is to follow its winding path inland. You're told the settlements there are smaller, slower, but richer in other ways. You nod. You're not chasing riches, just direction. As you push off from the shore, the boy waves, his hand wrapped around a wooden stick shaped like your knife. It's crooked, too thin, but he's proud. The river is narrow and quiet. Trees arch above their branches, laced like fingers. The current is gentle. You drift more than row. The oars move slowly, cutting swirls into the water's mirrored surface. You pass rocks smoothed by centuries' birds nesting in the hollow trunks, a deer watching from the edge of the brush. No one speaks for hours. It's not silence. It's listening. At one bend, you spot a fallen tree stretching across the river. The others prepare to steer around it. But you say, wait. You hop ashore, climb over the trunk, and begin cutting a new path through the branches. The axe is heavy, your arms burn, but the rhythm carries you. Chop, clear, haul. It takes an hour, maybe two. But when you're done, the boats pass smoothly. They thank you with nods, not words. That night, the crew makes camp on a small island in the river's heart. It's quiet, windless. The firelight flickers in the water. You sit beside it, staring at the stars reflected below. They seem closer now, like they've followed you here. Freitas once told you that every journey leaves a mark, on the land, on others, on yourself. You touch the knife at your side, the thread on your wrist, the coin in your pouch, the scar on your thumb. You're not who you were when you arrived at the Viking village, and tomorrow, you won't be who you are now. You lie back against the earth and let the river sing you to sleep. Part 21. The morning mist over the river is thick and silver, curling low over the surface like breath from some ancient spirit sleeping beneath the current. You wake slowly, your cloak damp from dew, your limbs sore from effort, but your mind clear. The others are already stirring. Some pack supplies, others relight the fire. A girl no older than 12 sharpens a wooden spear with silent focus. No one speaks much. There's nothing to say. You're all going somewhere, and for now, that's enough. The boats are pushed back into the water. This stretch of the river is narrower, with gentle turns and tall reeds brushing the edges. The oars creak as they move. Occasionally, a bird bursts from the trees and wheels overhead. You row slowly, feeling the pull of the current beneath you and the steady weight of the paddle in your palm. Every muscle moves without thought, now your body in tune with the rhythm of travel, the language of labor. By midday, the crew stops at a bend in the river where the bank rises into a soft green hill. There's a clearing at the top, and from there, you see everything: rolling meadows, a distant tree line, a thin wisp of smoke suggesting a farm or a settlement ahead. One of the scouts says there's a village 2 hours walk inland. Trade, shelter, rest. But first, a pause. You sit under the wide branches of an ash tree sharing food and stories. There's dried fish, dense bread, a sweet root that tastes like licorice. The man beside you speaks of a wolf he once watched cross a frozen lake without breaking stride. The woman across from you claims she saw lights in the northern sky that danced like women with veils of fire. You don't offer a story this time. You just listen. As the others nap or repair gear, you wander down the hill and find a cluster of stones in a circle near the river's edge. Some are marked with carvings, runes scratched by hand, weathered by rain. You kneel, brush away moss, and read what you can. Names, symbols, perhaps prayers or warnings. You add one of your own. The shape is simple, rough, not meant to last forever. But you carve it anyway. A curved line, a slash, a point. Your own mark. Left behind for no one. When the boats are loaded again, the current begins to pull harder. The river narrows, speeds up. The banks grow steeper. You brace your knees and dig in, rowing with care. A fallen tree appears suddenly around a bend. Someone shouts. The crew leans as one. The boat shifts, bumps, rights itself. No one falls. You keep moving. By late afternoon, the river slows. The trees open into a wide meadow, golden with sun. And there, nestled against the edge of the water, is the village. It's small, huts with sloped thatched roofs, smoke rising from shallow pits. A few people working outside, tending goats, hanging fish, washing clothes. They stop when they see you, watch silently. Then one of them, an old woman in a faded green shawl, lifts a hand. It's not a greeting. It's an invitation. You dock quietly, unload your things. The villagers approach with slow steps and open eyes. No weapons, no shouts, just curiosity. You're offered water first, then bread, then a place to sit in the shade. You thank them in their tongue, broken but understood. A fire is lit near the center of the settlement. You gather around it as the sun lowers. The village elder, a man with hair like riverstone, asks where you came from. You tell him simply north. He nods, doesn't ask for more. That night, as meat cooks over the fire and children run in circles chasing shadows, someone hands you a small block of wood. No words, just the gift. You know what it means. You begin to carve. This time you shape a boat. The hull long and curved, the sail raised, the oars drawn in mid-stroke. You don't rush. Each cut is deliberate. At some point, the villagers gather around to watch. You don't notice when the sun disappears, or when the fire burns low. Only when the carving is done do you look up and see their faces lit with quiet awe. One of the children reaches out and touches the boat. You hand it to her. She hugs it against her chest like treasure. You lie down beside the fire that night, cloak drawn around your shoulders, knife tucked at your side. The stars overhead flicker, gently mirrored in the still river below. You close your eyes and exhale. You don't know how far you'll travel yet, or when you'll return. But you know this much: wherever you go, the village goes with you, not as a place, but as a way of being. Part 22. You stay in the river village longer than planned, not because you're delayed, but because no one seems to be in a hurry. And to your surprise, neither are you. What was once a journey with direction has become one with depth. Days begin slowly now, with warm bread and berry tea shared beside a morning fire before the work begins. You wake early not out of habit, but because you want to. You're no longer surviving a place, you're participating in it. Your first task here is helping rebuild the fishing net shed. The old one collapsed under snow weeks ago, and the villagers have been using makeshift tarps to store their gear. You work alongside a man named Ivar, who speaks little but whistles constantly. His tunes are uneven, often wandering but oddly calming. You measure and cut fresh saplings, lash them with wet leather cord, and raise the frame in silence. It's not difficult, just slow. And by afternoon, the new shed stands simple and solid. The next day, you're taught how to smoke river trout. It's a delicate process, more subtle than the harsh brine soaking and drying you learned up north. Here, the fire is lower, the wood is alder, and the smoke dances, not burns. You help gut and clean the fish string, then hang them in rows. The scent is sweet and earthy. You didn't think you could appreciate another smoked fish again. But you do. At night there's music, not the haunting bone flute or wild drumbeats of the fjord village. Here it's gentler, a hollowed birch harp. A woman's clear voice, the soft tap of fingers on an empty clay pot. You listen more than you play. That's enough. One evening, a young boy asks if you'll tell a story. You're surprised. You haven't spoken of the past since you left, but you say yes. You tell them about your first night in the north, about slipping on ice, being chased by a goat, and choking on fermented shark. The children laugh until they cry. Even the elders smile. Then you tell them about the fire, the hunt, the carving, and the long house filled with steam and song. They grow quiet. When you're done, no one claps. They just nod slowly, as if your story now belongs to them. Another day, you help build a fish trap in the shallows. The design is clever stones arranged in a crescent leading into a narrow channel where baskets are placed. It takes all day to carry and place the rocks. Your shoulders ache, your palms blister again. But when you're done, you sit in the mud and feel something that's not exhaustion. It's satisfaction. You rinse your hands in the river and watch the current curl around your fingers. The water is warmer now, more alive. Green shoots rise along the bank. Tiny frogs skip from leaf to leaf. Spring has arrived quietly and completely. One morning, a man from another settlement arrives by boat. He carries news of the coast ships are gathering, preparing to sail west. There's talk of new routes, new lands, new chances. The elder of this village asks if anyone wants to go. No one speaks. Then he looks at you. Your place is not here forever, he says, but it was here long enough. You nod. That night you prepare your things. You've kept very little: your knife, your satchel, your cloak, and 3 small carvings tucked into a pouch. One is the goat. One is a ship. The third you made just yesterday, a simple house with smoke curling from its roof. You rise before dawn. The air is soft, the sky pale with early light. The river lies still. The villagers walk you to the dock. They offer no speeches, only gifts. A packet of herbs for tea, a piece of smoked fish, a length of strong cord. The girl who hugged your boat carving now hands you a single black feather. You don't ask where she found it. You just bow your head and accept. As you push off, the boat drifts with barely a sound. You look back once, only once. The river carries you forward, and the silence you carry inside feels like something earned. Part 23. You follow the river for days. Its bends are familiar now, each curve a quiet teacher, each bend another breath. The trees thin as you travel south, giving way to open land, broad meadows brushed with early wildflowers, scattered farms with low stone walls, sheep dotting the hills like bits of wandering cloud. The sky above stretches wide and calm. Even the wind has softened, no longer a blade, but a ribbon that curls around your neck like a whisper. You travel light, no crew, no rush. Just you, your satchel, your oar, and the slow, steady current. Occasionally, you pass others, a boat with 2 traders heading north, a family poling upriver with crates of grain. You nod. They nod. No words exchanged. Just the recognition of fellow travelers. At night, you camp beside the water, building small fires from driftwood and dry reeds. You eat what you have: dried meat, hard bread, a bit of cheese wrapped in cloth. You chew slowly, watching the light fade, listening to frogs chirping in the reeds and the quiet crackle of flame. You carve again, not for anyone, not to keep, just for the doing. Each motion a thread, pulling you closer to yourself. One morning, the river splits. To the right, the water flows faster, heading toward a lowland marsh and the sea beyond. To the left, it narrows and curves between 2 hills. You pause, oar resting in the current. You think of the coast of sails and trade and places whose names you've only heard in stories. Then you think of the hills of what might lie beyond, unwritten. You turn left. The climb is slow. You drag the boat over rocks, through shallow water, through narrow gullies tangled with bramble and roots. More than once, you slip. At one point, you lose your footing entirely and fall backward into the river, soaking your cloak and losing a bit of cheese. You laugh. You hadn't expected to laugh. It feels good. By dusk, you find shelter in a grove of birch trees. Their white trunks glow faintly in the last light. You hang your cloak to dry, eat what's left, and wrap yourself in a wool blanket. Above, stars scatter like seeds. You lie there staring, not thinking, just breathing. In the morning, you wake to voices. Distant at first. You stand slowly listening, not alarmed, curious. Over the ridge, you find them gathered in a field, tilling the soft earth with wooden tools, their sleeves rolled, faces focused. They're building something. You watch for a moment. Then someone turns and sees you. A man calls out. You raise a hand. Another steps forward, a woman with gray streaks in her hair and a scar across her cheek. She asks your name. You pause, then answer simply, "I've come from the river." She nods and gestures you closer. They ask no questions. They offer water, then bread, then a place by the fire. Later, you sit with them and listen. Their stories are different, of soil and seasons, of goats that give too little milk, of children born with strong lungs and stubborn eyes. But beneath the surface, the rhythm is the same: loss, effort, memory, resilience. You offer to help. They ask if you know how to chop wood. You nod. You don't say where you learned. You don't need to. That evening, as you split logs behind the hut, you feel something deep settle in your chest. Not joy, not sorrow, not even peace. Something older, a quiet, solid weight, the kind you can build a life around. You sleep that night inside a hut made of stone and turf, warm from the fire, full from the stew, your knife resting beside you. You don't know how long you'll stay here, but you do know this. You are no longer a guest in this life. You are becoming the kind of person others welcome by instinct. A helper, a builder, a keeper of stories. And somewhere far to the north on a runestone carved beneath a sky of snow and ash, your mark remains. Part 24. The days begin to blur, not from boredom, but from rhythm. You wake at first light, eat a simple meal, and take your place among the others. Some days you carry stones to help repair the outer wall of the village. Other days you gather kindling in the forest, or mend baskets, or guide oxen through narrow paths carved between the fields. The tasks change, but the rhythm stays. Action, effort, rest, repeat. It grounds you. It defines you. No one here calls you a stranger anymore. They call you by your name. You've earned your place not through one grand moment, but through countless small ones, steady hands, shared food, silence respected. You've grown used to the quiet between people here. It's not awkward. It's full. A kind of closeness born not from talk, but from trust. One morning, you're asked to lead the team harvesting peat from the marsh. You hesitate only for a second, but agree. You organize the work tie, the bundles help shape the pile for drying. When the elder checks the work later, she says nothing, just gives a single nod. It means more than praise. In the evenings, the fires are lit early. Spring is here, but the nights are still cold. You sit beside the others, sometimes talking, sometimes carving. The children gather around you more often now. They ask you to carve animals. They name them. One girl asks for a bear. You carve her 3, each smaller than her thumb. She carries them in a leather pouch around her neck like treasures from a story. They begin calling you the quiet carver. You smile at that. One night you're asked to bless a newborn. Not with words or rites, you're no priest, but with presence. The mother places the child in your arms, tiny, wrinkled, warm. You hold it gently, aware of your calloused hands, your cracked thumbs, your rough shirt. The child yawns. You don't say anything, but you stay until the baby falls asleep. When you hand her back, the mother thanks you softly. You go outside and stare up at the stars. You remember another sky, another night, another fire where you were the outsider, the one being tested. Now you are the one they trust. Later, a trader passes through the village, bringing with him news fabrics, metal pots, and stories. He speaks of far cities, of kings in the south, of plagues and famines and gold. The villagers listen. You listen too. You ask questions, then fall silent again. The trader looks at you differently. He sees your build, your scars, your calm. You've been north, he says. You nod. He offers to take you with him. To the coast, to the ships, to a place where the markets sing and the roads are made of stone. You don't say no, but you don't say yes either. That night you sit by the fire and turn a block of wood in your hands. You don't carve. You just feel the grain, the weight, the shape beneath your fingers. You think of Freitas, of the boy who carried your knife, of Stinky, of snow and stone and silence, of the runestone you left behind. You whisper to yourself, I'll go when it's time. In the days that follow, the village holds a planting ceremony. You've never seen one. The elders mark the fields with ash. Children scatter the seeds. A slow song rises, not loud, not proud, just steady like water finding its way. You sing it too. You don't know the words, but the melody is already inside you. That night, a child climbs onto your lap and asks, "Where is your home?" You don't answer right away. You point to the sky, to the earth, to your chest. She nods. Me too, she says. You both fall asleep beside the fire. Part 25. Spring deepens. The grass grows thicker, richer. Tiny flowers bloom between the rocks, dotting the hills with soft blues and yellows. The goats give more milk. The trees leaf out in pale green, their canopies swaying gently in a breeze that now carries the scent of soil instead of frost. Every day is longer than the one before, and you begin to notice it, not just the change in light, but in yourself. Your hands move faster now. Your voice carries a little more weight when you speak. You laugh more often, not because things are easier, but because they matter less in the way they once did. There is a rhythm to your days now, and it fits you like a second skin. One morning you're asked to teach. Not officially, not with ceremony. Just 3 boys who want to know how to tie the kind of knot you used to secure the trap line. You show them slow and patient, then watch as they fumble. Laugh, try again. They get it wrong, then right. You say nothing. But when they get it right a second time, one of them grins and says, "Just like yours." You smile back. Later that day, you're sent to the stream with 2 women to wash bundles of wool. The water is clear and shockingly cold, but the sun is warm, and soon your sleeves are soaked and your arms red to the elbow. The women sing as they work. One keeps time by tapping her wrist on the stone. The other follows her melody loosely like a bird weaving through trees. You don't sing, you hum. It's enough. That night, as everyone gathers in the central hut, a newcomer arrives. He's tall, younger than you, with wide eyes and a nervous stance. His cloak is torn. His boots are cracked. He smells of wet bark and anxiety. He doesn't speak, just watches the fire from the doorway. The elder rises, brings him water, and gestures to an empty seat. No one stares. No one questions. You recognize something in him, the quiet panic, the uncertainty. After the meal, you approach, not with questions, just a seat beside him and a piece of dried fruit. He takes it with shaking hands. Eventually he asks, "Is it always this quiet?" You think for a moment, then say, "At first it feels like silence, but it's not. It's space." He nods, says nothing more. In the days that follow, you show him how to carry water from the spring without spilling half of it, how to layer straw between stones for better warmth, how to bind a wooden frame for drying herbs. He learns fast, but you know what he really needs isn't technique. It's steadiness. You become the still point he leans toward, just as someone once was for you. By the end of the week, he's smiling more. One evening, he asks if you carved the small figures above the hearth. You nod. He asks if you'll teach him. You say yes. You hand him your old carving knife, not the one you made up north, but the first one given to you by Brynhild. He holds it like it's made of gold. When he asks what to carve, you tell him whatever you wish you had when you first arrived. He spends hours shaping something in silence. At the end, he hands it to you. It's small, rough. A figure with thick arms, wide shoulders, and a lopsided grin. It's you. You carry it with you after that, in your pouch, beside your own carvings. That night, a storm rolls in. Rain lashes the roof. Thunder rumbles over the hills. The wind howls through the stone paths like a living thing. You wake halfway through the night, the sound of the wind pressing against the walls like a heartbeat too loud to ignore. You rise and tend the fire. You check the doorframe. You comfort a goat. You do all of it without being asked. In the morning, the storm is gone. The village is quiet. You sit with your carving knife, not to make anything, but to hold something familiar. The young man joins you, says nothing, just sits. You both watch the sun rise over the edge of the valley. You don't know when you'll leave. You don't even know if you'll leave. But for now, you are here. Completely, fully, without question. Part 26. The next few weeks pass like a season within a season. Nothing dramatic happens. No raids, no ceremonies, no messages from afar, but everything shifts quietly. The crops break through the soil, green blades rising like promises. Children grow bolder, wandering farther from their mother's skirts. The river runs clearer. Your steps, once cautious, now feel permanent. You no longer walk like a guest. You move like you belong. The young man you helped begins to lead small tasks now. Others follow his voice. He carries himself differently, straighter. One morning, he fixes a leak in the roof before anyone else notices it. That afternoon, he teaches a boy how to shape arrow fletchings using goose feathers and birch sap. You watch, saying nothing. But when he glances at you, he smiles, and it's the kind of smile that says thank you without words. Your own work has shifted too. You've taken over the smokehouse, learning how to judge the fire by scent, how to space the racks so the heat curls rather than burns. You've memorized which wood gives what taste: alder for fish, spruce for meat, a mix of pine and ash for the rare goat belly. People come to you now with questions, requests, praise. You don't seek it, but you accept it. Not with pride, but with the quiet satisfaction of a task done right. One evening, the elder calls for a gathering. The fire is built high. Everyone circles it. He speaks slowly, naming each member of the village and their gift, what they bring, what they hold, what they've become. When he names you, he says, "This one came in winter, but stayed into spring, and taught us to listen even in silence." You lower your head. You've never heard yourself described like that before. When the circle breaks, a woman places a necklace in your hand. Simple leather. A tiny piece of antler tied at the center, carved with a curve and 3 lines. It's not decoration. It's belonging. The next morning, you walk the edge of the village alone, past the drying racks, the herb gardens, the place where the goats like to sleep in the sun. You reach the path that leads down to the river, the same one you arrived by weeks ago, the same one you could follow if you chose, and yet you don't step onto it. You sit on a low stone and listen to the wind comb through the grass. A trader will come soon, they say. A new face, a new map, maybe a boat that can carry you to the coast, to cities, to stories written in metal and stone. You could go. You could leave this behind. Take your skills, your knife, your quiet strength, and shape a life somewhere else. But there's no pull. Not yet. That night, a child knocks on your door holding a broken toy. It's a carved dog tail, snapped off, ear chipped. You sit by the fire, fix it gently, and return it without a word. They hug you around the middle before running off. You stare into the flames and think of another fire far north, surrounded by strangers, where your name meant nothing and every mistake echoed like thunder. Now your silence is understood. Now your actions speak before you do. You remember the first time you saw a Viking ship up close, how huge it felt, how dangerous. You remember hauling frozen ropes, slipping on wet planks, tasting salt in every breath. Now, the sea no longer frightens you, but neither does the land. You dream that night of river stones and goat tracks of ash trees, and the sound of children laughing in the distance. When you wake, you find the carving you were shaping in your sleep, a home with smoke rising from its roof and the tiniest figure standing beside it. You don't know what tomorrow will ask of you, but you know who you are now, and that is enough. Part 27. The trader arrives just after midday, his cart pulled by a shaggy ox, the wheels creaking over stone and mud, as if the journey itself weighed more than the goods he carries. He is older than most you've met, with a white beard that reaches past his collar and eyes so sharp they seem to peel the bark off trees. The villagers greet him with a mixture of joy and caution. He brings tools, cloth, salt, and stories, always stories. News from the coast, rumors of war, a kingdom with a boy king too young to rule, a village that vanished after a fire no one saw. You listen as always quietly, but this time he brings more than stories. He brings a map, hand-drawn, rolled in waxed linen, worn and smudged at the corners. He unrolls it slowly, reverently, placing stones at each edge to keep it flat against the wind. The village gathers around it in a wide ring. You step closer and see lines, some thick, some fading. Rivers, forests, sea routes, mountain passes, villages with names you've never heard. And in the corner, marked in faded ink, the place you left behind months ago. You run your finger along the path you took, then follow the river that brought you here. The trader notices. You've traveled, he says, not as a question, but as a fact. You nod, looking for something. You pause, then reply, no, not anymore. He raises an eyebrow. Then, why stay? You glance around the small huts, the firewood stacked in even rows, the field where children now chase each other barefoot. You say nothing, because the answer isn't a sentence, it's a feeling. Later, you sit with the map again, alone this time. You trace another route, one that leads east beyond the hills into valleys unknown even to the elder. You wonder what lives there, what kind of sky hangs over it, whether those villages know how to carve, how to sing, how to wait in silence like this one does. But you don't pack, you don't prepare, not yet. Instead, you return to your routine. You help fix a cracked beam in the drying shed. You teach the youngest boy how to bind a handle with wet leather. You cut herbs with a steady hand. The new season is bringing change, new work, new growth, new mouths to feed. And there is comfort in knowing you are part of that. That evening, the young man you once helped tells you he's leaving. He speaks with both excitement and fear, his eyes wide like they once were, but his voice steady. I think it's time, he says. You clasp his shoulder. You don't say good luck. You don't say I'll miss you. You just nod, and in that everything is said. You help him prepare a bundle of food, wrap a cloth around his shoulder, and give him your old carving knife, the one you carried when you first arrived. It's dull, you tell him. I'll sharpen it, he replies. And then he's gone, just like that. The village shifts around his absence. The days go on. A child asks if you'll teach her to carve. You do. A goat escapes again. You catch it. A roof caves under a sudden rain. You help rebuild. And one morning before the sun fully rises, you return to the map. You kneel. You stare. You fold it carefully, place it in your pack, and sit beside it. Not because you've made a decision, but because you're ready. And being ready, you've learned, is the only thing you ever truly need before a journey. Part 28. You rise before dawn, not because of noise or duty, but because something in you stirs quiet, insistent, steady. The fire in the hearth is still smoldering. You add a bit of wood, crouch near it, and watch the flame catch again, slow and sure. Outside, the village still sleeps. The wind presses softly at the walls. The world is still gray with early light. You step into the morning cold boots, crunching faintly on damp grass. The fields beyond the huts are dark with dew, and the stream that winds along the edge of the village sparkles faintly under the fading moon. For a long while you stand at the boundary, the invisible line between staying and going, between known and unknown. You've stood here before, but this time your pack is already on your shoulder. You walk through the village one last time. No one stops you. No one calls out, but doors open. Faces appear at windows, not to ask where you're going, not to beg you to stay, just to witness it. One by one, they offer what they can. A slice of bread, a small pouch of dried herbs, a carved token tied to a bit of leather cord. You thank each one with a nod, your voice quiet, each word more felt than heard. At the edge of the village, you find a stone placed beside the path. On it, your name scratched in clumsy lines, crooked but unmistakable. Beneath it, another word, ours. You don't cry, but something moves inside you, slow and deep as river water. You begin your walk without fanfare. The hills rise ahead, soft and golden with spring. The path is narrow but clear, winding between trees that haven't yet shed their last chill. You walk steadily, your steps light but certain. Midday comes. You stop to rest near a stream, eating half a loaf of bread and drinking from the cold water with cupped hands. Your fingers are stained with ash and resin. Your sleeves still smell faintly of smoke. You carry the scent of your life with you. By afternoon, you pass a crossroads. One path leads back to the river, the other climbs higher toward unknown valleys. You take the higher path. It's steeper, rockier, your breath growing shallow as you climb. But the view widens. The trees part, and when you reach the ridge, you see it a stretch of land so vast it makes your chest expand. Villages tucked into curves of green, distant fires trailing smoke, a glint of water on the far horizon. You sit for a moment, letting the wind wrap around you like a cloak. You reach into your pouch and pull out the small carving the boy gave you. Still rough, still whole. You hold it in your palm and whisper, not to anyone, not even to yourself, just to the road. Then you stand and begin walking again. Not fast, not driven, just forward. The way the river taught you, the way the fire taught you, the way the quiet carved into your bones taught you. You don't know the name of where you're going, but you know what to do when you get there. You know how to carry weight, how to listen, how to build, how to wait. You know how to stay when needed, and how to leave when called. And in that knowing, you are no longer the outsider. You are the kind of person stories remember. The quiet one who came from winter and brought spring with him. Part 29. The days stretch longer now. Each sunrise comes earlier, and each sunset holds a little more gold before slipping behind the hills. You walk at a steady pace, not counting distance, only letting the land unfold beneath your feet. The high ridge path winds through forests and open meadows, past stone cairns and wild beehives, past ruins overgrown with moss and flowers whose names you do not know, but whose presence feels like greeting. Sometimes you see others travelers with carts, herders moving their flocks, a woman leading a child by the hand toward somewhere safe. You nod as you pass, and they nod back. No questions, just the shared silence of those in motion. Each night you stop early enough to build a fire, not out of need, but as ritual. It's what grounds the day. The gathering of twigs, the building of the shape, the single flame catching dry bark and curling into warmth. You sit beside it, carve a little, eat slowly, and watch the dark press in around you. Some nights you sleep under trees, the canopy thick enough to block the moonlight. Other nights you sleep in the open stars above and earth below. You've stopped feeling like you're between places. This is the place. Wherever the fire is, wherever your feet are resting, you are already there. On the 5th day, you reach a valley where the wind carries the smell of wild thyme and warm soil. Below, you see another village larger than the one you left, built around a wide square with tall poles strung with ribbons. A market is being set up. You hear voices, laughter, the faint clinking of metal, and music. Not the music of ritual or mourning, but of joy, simple and rhythmic, meant for dancing. You pause on the ridge above and watch for a while. Then you begin your descent. The villagers meet you without suspicion. A few glance at your knife, your cloak, your boots worn smooth from miles of stone. One man asks where you've come from. You point back toward the hills. He grins. That's enough of an answer, he says. You help unload a wagon just to be useful, and someone hands you a cup of ale. You drink it slowly, grateful not for the taste, but for the gesture. You sit near the fire pit and listen as vendors barter, as children chase each other through the square, as a woman sings a song about the wind stealing apples from a merchant's cart. Later, someone asks if you carve. You nod. They hand you a block of soft wood and gesture toward a stool. You sit, pull out your knife, and begin. The crowd forms slowly, curiously. You don't speak. You don't need to. The shape takes form, a bird mid-flight, wings curved slightly back, as if caught between gliding and soaring. When you finish, the man who gave you the wood accepts it with a smile, then hands it to a boy watching from behind his father's leg. The boy holds it like a feather caught from the sky. You say nothing. He says nothing. But the meaning passes between you both as clearly as firelight through smoke. That night you sleep in the barn. The hay is soft, the goats quiet, the stars bright enough to cast gentle shadows. You wake before dawn and leave a carved wolf at the door before continuing on. No goodbyes, just the rhythm of motion returning. For 3 more days you follow a road carved by cartwheels and footsteps. You cross a bridge of stone worn smooth in the middle from years of wait. You pass a grove where someone has hung charms from every branch, bones, feathers, tiny woven baskets. You stop and leave one of your own, a tiny horse carved from ash, and tie it to a low limb with a strip of bark. It swings gently as you walk away. The road narrows again. You meet fewer people now. One evening you find an old watchtower crumbling beside the edge of a forest. It has no roof, but the walls still hold. You make a fire inside and eat the last of your dried meat. The wind whistles through the cracks in the stone, and owls call from somewhere above. You lean your back against the wall, feeling its weight behind you, and stare into the flame. The smoke curls upward, disappearing into the night. You think of the boy who carried your knife, of the child who hugged your carving, of Freitas watching you from the longhouse door, of the goat, of the silence. You sleep with your hand resting on your satchel, not because you're afraid, but because everything important to you now fits within reach. In the morning, you walk through the forest until the trees thin and you see another river. Narrow, gentle, sunlight catches on the surface like gold coin tossed from the sky. You kneel to drink, and your reflection stares back, not a stranger, not a warrior, not a wanderer, but something simpler. Someone who knows what to do with his hands. Someone who knows how to listen. Someone who understands what it means to arrive without needing to be invited. Later, you follow the river until you see smoke in the distance. Not the thick smoke of fire, but the thin, lazy kind that comes from cooking from bread, baking on flat stones. A small cluster of homes rests near the bend in the water, surrounded by fields already green with promise. As you approach, a girl carrying a basket sees you. She doesn't flinch. She just watches, curious, but calm. You raise your hand. She nods once, then disappears into the nearest hut. No one else appears. But when you reach the edge of the village, someone has already set a wooden stool beneath a tree facing the river, as if it was waiting. You sit, and for a long time you don't move. You just listen to the water. Part 30. You wake in the same spot you sat down, the rising sun warming your face, the river murmuring softly beside you. No one disturbed you during the night. No one came to ask your name or your business. And yet beside the stool where you now stretch your legs, there's a bowl of warm grain porridge resting on a flat rock, steam curling from its surface. You pick it up, feel its weight, and take a slow bite. It's slightly sweet flavored with something wild, maybe crushed berries, maybe honey. You eat it all. Then you rinse the bowl in the river, set it back where you found it, and stand. The village beyond the trees begins to stir. You hear doors creak open. Voices calling softly, the soft clank of metal against stone. You step into the clearing and a woman waves you over. She hands you a bucket of water and points toward a row of seedlings near a low fence. You don't ask what she means. You kneel and begin to water the plants one by one, watching the soil drink it in. She watches for a moment, then returns to her own task. No words, just shared motion. By midday, you've helped repair a broken fence post, lifted 2 baskets of thatch onto a roof, and taught a small boy how to sharpen a stick without splitting it. He thanks you by handing you a pine cone tied with string. You tie it to your belt like a charm. It swings as you walk, a tiny reminder of what's passed between you. This place is quieter than the last village. Smaller. No market square, no trade carts, no loud laughter at night. But it has its rhythm, its breath. You feel it in the way people move, in the way animals are let out at dawn and brought back in at dusk. You feel it in the way each meal is shared not as celebration, but as necessity. No one waits for a signal. They simply act when the time is right. You find yourself walking the boundary paths before the sun sets, tracing the edges of the fields, checking where the fence meets the tree line, where the road curves back into the hills. You stop and clear a fallen branch without being asked. You pick up a broken bit of pottery and stack it neatly on a stone. No one sees you do these things. And yet, the next day, a bundle of dry wood appears beside your shelter. An unspoken thank you. One evening, a child sits beside you by the fire with a lump of clay and mimics your carving motions. You don't stop her. She shapes something, shapeless smiles, then crumbles it and begins again. You do the same with your wood. By the time the fire dims, neither of you have made anything worth keeping. But both of you sleep soundly. One morning, while hauling a bucket of river stones for path work, you see a young woman standing near the bank looking down into the current. She's not moving, not collecting water, just standing. You walk past her without comment, not wanting to intrude. But she turns and says, "My brother left last spring. He was like you." You stop. "He said he'd be back when the mountain snow melted." She doesn't sound angry, just thoughtful. You ask quietly, "Did he come back?" She shakes her head. "No, but I think he became something better somewhere else." You nod. "That feels true." She walks away without another word. You carry your bucket to the path and begin laying the stones in silence. That evening, you carve a face. Not anyone you know, not even yourself. Just a face with kind eyes and a slightly crooked mouth. You place it near the door of your shelter. A boy sees it and names it. He calls it the Watcher. The name stays. The seasons begin to change again. The air is warmer now. Bees hum in the flowers. Birds gather near the water, and the goats sleep longer in the sun. One morning, you're asked to join the others in the field for the first full planting. You rise before the light breaks and walk barefoot through the wet grass, standing in a line with 10 others, each of you holding a sack of seed. When the signal is given, you begin. Step, scatter, step. Step, scatter, step. The movement becomes a chant your body repeats until it's no longer something you do, but something you are. When the planting ends, the village shares its largest meal of the year. Flatbread hot from the stone, wild greens tossed in clay bowls, smoked meat pulled from the coals, and berries preserved in thick syrup. You sit on the ground like everyone else, shoulder to shoulder, passing bowls, dipping fingers, chewing slowly. You're handed a cup of something strong. You sip. It burns. Then it warms. Then it disappears into laughter. That night, there's a fire not for necessity, but for celebration. Someone plays a drum. Someone sings. 2 boys wrestle for fun, collapsing into the dirt, laughing. You find yourself pulled into a circle, hands on shoulders, feet moving slowly to the beat. It's awkward at first. Then it isn't. You move like you've always known the steps. You wake late the next morning, head pounding but lighthearted. A new carving sits outside your shelter. It's a fish, slightly lopsided, shaped from soft wood. You recognize the girl's work. She leaves no note. You hang it beside the Watcher. As days pass, you notice more carvings appear. A bird, a tree, a goat, a tiny fire. None of them perfect. All of them left quietly like offerings. You begin spacing them evenly, creating a line along your shelter wall. It becomes known without being declared as the story row. And each one tells something true. Not about where you came from, not even where you're going, but what you've touched. What's changed because you stayed long enough to leave something behind. One afternoon, as you mend the handle of a broken rake, a man asks if you'll stay for the next season. You don't answer right away. You look up at the sky, feel the warmth on your face, and say, "I'll stay until the path says otherwise." He grins. That night, you sit by the river again, carving nothing, just listening. The water says nothing, but it keeps moving, and so will you one day. But not tonight. Tonight you are still, and it's more than enough.